What's up, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar. And to my right is the Norwegian assassin, Lars Pearson. What's up, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Eating my kid's candy. So I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, glad to be here. My name is Lars Pearson. I used to work for Wizard Magazine and currently am with Norwegian Press. And I'm sorry that I'm having some lighting issues in here, so I might be a little suffused in darkness because this is part of a new feature we are calling Near Mint Condition After Dark.
Well, let's not go that dark. Down below is this wonderful lady that joins me for Map My Ex and sometimes doing movie and TV reviews. And that is Odfel. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. Happy to be back, especially with this topic. I'm really excited. So, yeah.
Awesome. So unfortunately, Jess can't join us, and neither can Curtis. Both of them have Curtis has other things that popped up, and Omni Dog is a little under the weather. Well, actually, a lot under the weather. So, thoughts with my buddy. So I hate that he's feeling bad. But he messaged me, and actually, I just got back, heard back from him, and he's like he's pretty miserable. So
they're both missed.
I hope he gets better. So tonight is usually when we do the old reader, new reader, but Maddie is taking off because she's also sick. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to talk about a topic that was brought up towards the end of our chat whenever we were doing the Marvel previews last week, I believe. Last Thursday. Somebody brought up the fact, hey, what's your favorite retcons, or what are the worst retcons according to y'all? So how we're going to split this up, so we're going to talk about our favorite retcons, and depending on the time, we'll talk about our least favorite retcons. When talking of retcons, though, I will say that there's gonna be talk of spoilers, and that's just not, I mean, there's no way you can avoid it when talking about specific retcons. So I am going to put a banner at the bottom that says spoilers. Maybe we can mention, well, no, that's even hard because even the topic is,
by its very nature, there are going to be spoilers.
Yeah, so I hate to
spoilers.
Yeah,
one day we will do a panel on, in the headline will be spoilers, and you'll have to run a spoiler warning. One day we will do a panel.
Okay. So just in case, spoilers. Now I'm going to put a little banner at the bottom that just runs across and says spoilers. And yeah, we'd love to know what you think about our picks for the chat. Spoilers from 35 years ago. Dude, you'd be surprised how many people in the comment section get upset with me for spoiling something that happened 30 years ago. Then even when things are in the title, you can't help it. But
no.
All right.
Should we also take a moment and just very quickly define what we mean by a retcon? Because to my mind, well, first of all, we should say that any long-running series, there's going to be retcons, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. One of the reasons that Great Gatsby never got retconned is because F. Scott Fitzgerald only wrote the one book. But with an ongoing series, it's going to happen. But I feel like we're not talking about reboots, like not like Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right. We're not talking about New 52. We're talking about actual retcons where in order to move the story forward, you got to go back to the past to change things.
You have to retroactively decide that something you thought was true isn't true.
Yeah. So the really interesting thing that that's really why I invited Odfel is because you have a lot of older readers.
Yes.
Definitely not me. That I've been reading for a long time. And, we tend to get really personal about these things. So when a new writer comes along, it's like, oh, no, that wasn't the case. Sentry and Rogue had a fling. You're like, bullshit. No, they didn't. So it's things like that, like a retcon that, that one isn't that big of a deal. But, like those kind of things that a new writer comes in, obviously has not read the previous runs or doesn't care, maybe read a Wikipedia entry, and just starts writing these things like they were actual parts of the character's history. So we're going to talk about our favorite ones first. So we're going to keep it positive. Then we're going to talk about our least favorite ones. So again, if you're just now joining, spoilers that cannot really be helped.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna let ladies go first.
Yeah.
Odfel.
Oh.
Like, what are some of your favorite retcons that worked for you? We can go round table one at a time, talk about the ones we're picking, but let me put the banner on really quick.
So part of this is tricky because when I was going through and looking at retcons, a lot of the ones I recognize as retcons are really bad ones because I just simply haven't read a lot of older comics for things outside of X-Men. So some of these just might be over my head as being retcons. So some of my list of positives are actual retcons I've incurred, and some are ones I looked up like most wild, weird retcons, and some of them were funny that I figured would be good for this.
Okay.
So I'll start with good ones that I like, which is Jean being in the egg at the bottom of the ocean. As much as I feel like Phoenix should have stayed dead at some point, X Factor is one of my favorite runs, and initially it was going to be a whole new team and not the original 5 because they had no intention of bringing the original 5 back. Cyclops was going to stay in Alaska, Jean was going to stay dead, but then all of a sudden the Fantastic Four find this egg at the bottom of the river and it's Jean, and I'm really happy they retconned this because I think X Factor was a really fun run.
That is to me the definition of a retcon. Lars, you can jump in here because the original idea was for, well, it was Claremont, of course. He was like, hey, let's bring the spirit of the original 5 back, but Jean is dead. Remember, Shooter said she stays dead, so we're not bringing her back. Instead, let's use her sister Sarah. And editorial, I can't remember exactly whose idea it was, decided, no, let's bring the original 5 characters back. And of course, in that, like, there were some great things to, right? Like, we got Jean back, but then this is where the whole, boy, Cyclops is kind of a dickhead started, because he left his wife and newborn child to go and be with his ex.
It gives me such mixed feelings because they do both Maddie and Cyclops dirty throughout this run, but it also gives us Goblin Queen, and she's such a good villain. So I'm like,
Agreed. So I agree with that. I think it was it definitely brought, it would have been a lot different if they had kept the whole dead is dead and Jean, was not there, and it was her sister Sarah that was instead with X Factor. It definitely would have been a different vibe. I don't know how it would have worked, but I really enjoyed the issues that featured him. I mean, if not, and then those things led into the 12 and Fall of the Mutants and Inferno, and then Inferno, it all kind of came. And honestly, Inferno was a lot of fun because it was like Claremont was like, okay, Maddie was a clone of Jean, let's make her into a psychopath and have dealings with demons. So that's a good one. I like that choice. Lars, how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, that was kind of on my list. It wasn't near the top, but so it's interesting that the X-Men go through long stretches without Jean, and you think, well, they can get by without her. But then there's been other phases where, like right now in the Krakoa stories, I'm really glad Jean is around. I think she's a really great character, and I'm glad she's there participating. I think, in a way, the objection was more to how it was done back in the day. Claremont famously did not like the angle that, upon Jean coming back, Cyclops immediately abandons his wife. And because it really makes Cyclops look really bad. But no, I'm sorry.
All right.
Real sloppy for him.
So to clarify, no, X Factor is not a retcon. The retcon is the idea that Jean Grey died. The retcon and said, no, it was not Jean that died. It was the Phoenix Force. Phoenix Force put Jean in a state of suspended animation at the bottom of the ocean, and that's where the Avengers found her. Yeah. That is the retcon.
And it's
because that never happened.
Contained to one issue, isn't it? I think all of that is just like one issue, and they're like, okay, they're back.
Well, yeah, it was started with the Avengers, and then it led into the Fantastic Four, what's exactly in the egg, and then they're like, oh my gosh, it's Jean Grey. And then it's X Factor number 1. Of course, at the end of the Defenders too. But that's the retcon, so much so that Claremont wrote some things into Classic X-Men to say, oh yeah, this is how she approached Jean. I'll save your life in issue 101 of Uncanny X-Men.
She's a very strong character, and I really liked how Grant Morrison used her, even though he killed her again. And I'm glad she's around. I'm just glad she's around, especially when there's points in X-Men continuity where they're dealing with a lot of their members. Like right now with Krakoa, they have to put up with the corrupt scuzzballs, like Mr. Sinister and Sebastian Shaw and stuff. And like Jean and Scott and whatnot offer a nice counterweight to that. So yeah, no, I'm although death became a revolving door in comics, I think ultimately Jean coming back was positive. Yeah.
Lars. What's one of your favorites?
Well, one that I really appreciate weirdly is what they did with Damian Wayne, which I think counts as a retcon because, of course, the first story with Damian was this graphic novel called Son of the Demon, in which it was established that Bruce Wayne had relations with Talia, and they had, well, that she had birthed a child, which she'd like left in an orphanage. And I say it was a retcon because I don't think at the time it went out under the Elseworlds logo. I'm not sure they even had Elseworlds. And so what had to happen was DC had to claw back that story and claim it was Apocrypha and that it had not occurred. And in fact, when I was working at Wizard, you would bring up Son of the Demon, how Bruce and Talia had a child together, and the DC people would get very uncomfortable and squirm. And they'd go, no, that didn't happen. And then along comes Grant Morrison, and he's like, that totally happened. That totally is in continuity.
I think it was the ending that was left open, right? Because it wasn't that them okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I remember right. Because towards the end of that, Son of the Demon, was it that they had slept together or that Raj had taken like
well, no, they had a child. They had the retcon is that DC claimed for
I got you.
DC claimed for 15, 20 years. That story is not in continuity. It did not occur. It did not happen. Bruce Wayne does not have a child. And it's only when Grant Morrison comes along, he's like, actually, upon hindsight, it totally happened. That's the retcon.
I'm trying to remember how Morrison explained the child.
I don't think Morrison bothered. Morrison was.
I think they did, and that's. Hold on, I'm trying to think. In their run of Batman, I think there was a point where Morrison stated that it was some line of dialogue that I think it was taking the DNA from Batman and put it with Talia's egg. Like they didn't have.
Oh, did they completely?
Oh no! In Morrison's world, they totally were going out.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
No. In fact, Morrison has this scene where they're going at it, and Batman is still wearing his mask. They were totally getting it on. Yes.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, Odfel, go ahead.
No, I was just like, that's very Grant Morrison. I can absolutely see that. Like, I haven't read their run on Batman, but that tracks absolutely. Because,
like I say, 4 years, the opinion at DC was that did not occur.
Yeah,
gotcha.
That did not happen.
Damien is so cemented as his son now that it's like, yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was ever like in a continuity question. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. But which I think, I quite enjoy Damien.
Hold on here. Maybe this is what I was thinking. Talia kept him and raised him in a special test tube tank, I think. But Damien was conceived the old-fashioned way. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying how he was conceived.
Yeah. I think Damien, now that he's leveled out a bit and he's not quite the psychopath trying to kill everybody or trying to kill Robin, I think he's quite an enjoyable character. And I think he's quite an interesting character because if your parents are the world's greatest detective and the daughter of one of the most dangerous men alive, and your mother is like leader of the League of Assassins, you're not going to turn out normal. And I think he's a very fun character. Yeah.
Okay. Jess just said he's gonna try to jump on. He's feeling a little better, so that'd be good. For me,
Omar, for you.
Okay. There are a lot. I really like. The older I get, the more I should hate retcons, but some of them really work, and some of them I'm really excited to talk about tonight because I know Odfel probably shares a lot of them with me. It's also really difficult to like X-Men. It's almost hard to like X-Men unless you like retcons, and you have to just kind of roll with the punches. But for me, one of the greatest retcons of all time is Green Lantern Rebirth.
Yes.
So spoilers, but for people that didn't know, in the early 90s, there was a storyline called Emerald Twilight where Ron Mars came in as a brand new writer of the Green Lantern run. And issues 48, 49, and 50, he made Hal Jordan go completely nuts and become evil, killing his own friends, taking their rings, and becoming this entity known as the Parallax. And he became evil. I mean, he was like a villain. I mean, if you remember Zero Hour, and then towards the end, of course, he became, he gave his life to restore the sun in Final Night. And eventually he was, I guess he was reborn as the new Spectre for a while. But in Green Lantern Rebirth, they said that he did not, in fact, become evil. That instead, it was an entity called the Parallax that had gone inside of him and corrupted him. And I was like, damn, what that works. That works. I'm in, because that makes Hal Jordan still be a great character. That makes that turn from, everything is okay. And I understand seeing the destruction of Coast City by who was Cyborg Superman and Mongol, right? Seeing that still shouldn't make you go and try to kill all the Green Lantern Corps. And I get it, you're trying to resurrect them and you're trying to break the oath. But dude, when my dude came back and there was this yellow thing that, fed on fear, and it was revealed it was the Parallax. That's the Parallax. I was like, holy crap, that is some good storytelling. I like that. I love that retcon. That's a retcon with me that works because it stays true to the character. It didn't change the story. They didn't go back and say Hal Jordan did not kill those people. In fact, he did. It was just that he was possessed by the Parallax. So I think one of the best retcons in comics for sure.
I would agree. If you look at Jeff Johns' notes on that, he writes like, okay, we have to find a way to exonerate Hal Jordan of this crime. We just do. Now, it still doesn't fit completely because I think, as you say, it's a very good one to bring him back. The degree to which Hal is later accepted by the Corps, it's like, well, you murdered a whole bunch of us, but had plausible deniability. I don't entirely buy that, but this is comics. You have to squint at some point.
Hey-o! There we go. What's up, buddy?
Hey-o.
Glad to have you here, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Are you feeling better, man?
Yeah, a little bit. And then my wife pointed out that every time I do a show, it usually takes my mind off it and I feel better. So
okay,
I'd much rather sit here and be given grief by Omar than sit in bed and feel sad for myself. So
I'm only going to give you grief because your choices are just so horrible, though.
Yeah, that's
every single time. Look,
we are a very nurturing and supporting presence. Yeah.
Before we even started this stupid thing, people were hashtagging Team Omni Dog, which whatever the hell that means. He hasn't even. By the way, Jess's favorite retcon is One More Day. Just gonna go ahead and throw that out there.
Son of a bitch! I have this down already. That was the first thing I was going to talk about.
I said. All right, but we've gone round table really quick. Odfel, this is my buddy Omni Dog. Omni Dog, it's my buddy Odfel.
Odfel.
So she chose the return of Jean Grey, or Jean Grey actually not dying, but it was the Phoenix Force that died at the beginning of X Factor 1. And Lars chose Damian Wayne, was created the old natural way, the horizontal mambo.
No, I chose.
Wait, was that it?
I chose the DC for the longest time said that Son of the Demon story was not in continuity, and then they later decided it was in continuity.
That was it. Gotcha. So, Jess, what's one of your favorite one that worked for you? That was a really good retcon.
Okay, I just read it this year, so you guys are probably. Thank you, Bar.
You even have a Spanish following.
I do. I do have a Spanish following.
All right, go ahead.
I just read it earlier this year, and it would be JMS's Spider-Man introduction of Ezekiel and the Totem, the Spider Totem. In the way that it wasn't just a radioactive spider that randomly bit Spider-Man, but he was chosen as the totem in Earth 616, and it opened up the multiversity of the Spider-Verse. and helped create the Spider-Verse. If I'm remembering correctly, we all know that I have the memory of about 30 seconds. So I'm pretty sure it helped introduce Moreland and the Inheritors later that were, excuse me, trying to kill all the spiders of the various universes, and pulled all the, gave us, pulled Spider Ham, Peter Porker into the picture, which is hilarious. And I know Curtis, I can only get away with saying that it's hilarious because Curtis isn't here. He worships at the altar of Peter Porker.
I don't know why. Thank you, Rib Wilson. Jess,
oh, thank you.
Omar, Jess speaks better Spanish. And get the... I'm on retcon Lionheart's ass.
I did enjoy when Spider-Ham was in the Spider-Verse movie. I was thinking when they announced it, I was like, you know what? If they would do Peter Porker, I would be quite thrilled. And sure enough, he was there.
So I love that movie, but yeah,
all
that
of
was
that led to Spider-Verse eventually with Moreland and all that. But if it wasn't for the foundation that he laid with Spider Totem, absolutely,
yeah.
So JMS, what a way to kick it off, man.
I know that he actually I researched One More Day because Minister of Comics read his autobiography, JMS's autobiography, and he wanted his name taken off of One More Day. He didn't approve of it, or they still stuck his name on it, as far as I know, but he didn't approve of it, didn't like it, wasn't excited about it at all. It wasn't his work. And so I figured that was that was too easy. I mean, you let off introducing me with One More Day, so I knew better than to lead with that.
Yeah, I can't wait to get there because I'm sure eventually we're gonna have to talk about that as one of the worst ones, of course. That or since past. All right. Y'all want to add something to Jess's choice? JMS, Spider-Man, Odfel, Lars?
Well, as our most beloved pet. Oh, sorry, Alpha. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna say I don't know very much at all about the Spider-Man universe. I'll even admit it. I'm not a huge Spider-Man reader, so I know very little about Spider-Verse, mostly the movie, but it sounds like a good choice. So go ahead.
Well, Jess, since you are our most beloved panelist, I admire how you're apparently trying to destroy your reputation with such a controversial choice, because I don't think that's a particularly beloved run. Although I agree with you in that I really do love Spider-Verse the comic, and that it fed into that. Certainly, I think, yeah, that was really, really good.
I think JMS's run is very beloved, though. Like, it's got a huge fan following. Absolutely, it does.
Okay.
I think the people that enjoy it, we choose to ignore certain stories that are.
I was enjoying that run until something happened that made me put the book down and never go back to finish part 2. That and I don't think he was responsible for that either. I think that he wanted it to be Peter, talking about Norman and Gwen, of course, the worst thing that ever happened in comics ever. Yikes. And that was, and they had children. And then I think Nick Spencer tried to retcon it earlier this year, but it's too late. That horse has been way out of the barn for way too many years.
It worked. It's retcon now.
I think Omar, as you say, JMS's run is very beloved if you just ignore half of it.
I was only going to bring up the Ezekiel and the spider totem.
The totem thing I thought was quite fun. It's the sort of thing that only a comic book fan can enjoy. Any attempt to introduce it into the movies, trying to explain to mainstream America, so there are these spider totems, I don't think that's going to work. But for the comics, yeah, it's been an interesting run.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
All right, let's take it back to Odfel, and then I'll look at some of the chat. Odfel, what's another one that you really liked?
So I don't know if this technically counts as a retcon, and if it doesn't, I can just give another one. But Bucky being brought back in the comics.
Yeah, that absolutely counts.
Yeah, because he was dead for years. So I'm like, I don't know if it counts as just a character reintroduction or technically a retcon, but Bucky having lived, I think, the majority of the stories that Winter Soldier has had, both on his own and with Captain America, and I love the offshots with Black Widow, have just all been great. And to think that if they hadn't retconned the fact that his sidekick lived for so long, we wouldn't have gotten any of this character is wild to me. I can't say I've read much of Bucky before the retcon, but the fact that Winter Soldier is a character that's been created is, I think, really cool.
That was on my list too.
We used to say, man, that dude is Bucky dead. And we can't say that anymore. Like that was one of the biggest retcons that came out of Brubaker's run. Very interesting enough, like Red Hood was also coming back around the same time. Both of them in different, like, of course, different universes, but different ways they were coming back. But both of them coming back as not good guys too. So I found that really interesting. But yeah, I dug that return. I was pissed off at first because that dude killed my nomad growing up in the 90s, Jack. And I was like, what the hell? Who the hell's this guy? And it turns out to be the real Bucky. And I'm like, nobody asked for the real Bucky to come back. But so many stories came out of that. And yeah, and now he's like a big part of the Marvel universe.
Oh yeah, no, he's been in so many runs just in the past year of, I think he's like integral to Black Widow's story at this point. And I think a lot of her stories just couldn't be told without him. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Always appearing. So he's like transcended just being kind of an offshoot sidekick by far.
Yeah. I feel like Winter Soldier, as far as a Marvel movie, is always seems to be named number 1 or number 2 as people's favorite movie. It's like not even close. It's always Winter Soldier. Now, everybody's taste is different. I'm not saying that as an absolute, but that's how important of a character he has become. That is a really good point, because it used to be Uncle Ben, Batman's parents, and Bucky were the only ones. Those are the ones that were you never touched. They always stayed quite dead. And now it's just Uncle Ben and Batman's parents.
Yeah, for years and years in comic circles, that's what was said. Was that, well, they can't bring back Uncle Ben because it would help to rob Peter Parker of his reason to be Spider-Man. And then they would also go, and they won't bring back Bucky. And you stop and go, well, why wouldn't they bring back Bucky? I guess the reason was they would run the risk of just coming off as too silly. But they,
and it had so much time had passed too.
Yeah, what Brubaker and company basically created an essentially different character, but based on the same one, or certainly a way different version of it.
That's a good retcon that also worked with me. And I remember him having flashback issues too in like Wolverine Origins. Anyway, Lars, what's your next choice, buddy?
I think this one counts. Frank Miller introducing Stick into Daredevil's mythology. Because I think number one, Stick is a very interesting character, and his relationship with Matt Murdock is very interesting. Also, it just makes the Daredevil story make a lot more sense. As was pointed out in the Ben Affleck Abomination, just because you gain hyper senses, it doesn't immediately follow that you're going to gain these incredible martial arts skills. And that Stick was this mentor who, taught him how to use his abilities and to become the amazing fighter that he was. I think that really helps the mythology a great deal.
Mm-hmm. I know that Daredevil Man Without Fear is a retcon. And there's some aspects, right, that Frank Miller wrote. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, to me, that is the perfect year one, or that's the perfect origin story.
It's really good.
I love that story.
It's really, really good. Yeah.
Introducing Stick and Elektra that far into the game, like you're talking 150 plus issues, 140 plus issues.
Well, this is like 170-ish. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Years after the character started. And we've seen his origin, and now you're just adding things to the origin that was always supposed to be there. That is the definition of retcon, and man, it was so good.
Yeah.
With a blind dude with a stick, like teaching you martial arts and telling you to defend yourself against this evil organization that has demons and ninjas. Oh my gosh, how badass is that?
Yeah.
Instead of fighting Stiltman all day, every day.
And in a way, it was in some regards, it was easier to do a retcon back then because you could rely on the audience not having exposure to the original stories. First of all, I'm not sure that introducing Stick really is a deal breaker anyway. But, you know, at the time, I had no ability to go back and read the early Daredevils. So if this was a violation of that continuity, I would not have known. I think we forget this. When George Perez and Marv Wolfman decided to bring back the Doom Patrol for New Teen Titans, they were like, okay, we are going to have to explain to people who the Doom Patrol even are. Because the current, like myself, I had no idea. That's my first exposure to the characters. I had no idea who these people were. So I think for Frank Miller to go, here is Stick, I think it worked, you know, it was even easier. But no, it's a great choice.
Of course, it's a great choice. You're the one that made it.
No. I mean, it was a great choice for Frank Miller to do.
Oh, okay.
But thank you as well.
Thank you so much, Montana. This is for Geo. We need an Inhumans. I'll make sure to mail him out an Inhumans omnibus as soon as I get one. Hopefully, we'll get one day. Wow, Geo has a lot of love. Okay, so back to me. For me, there's a lot that I love, and I'm trying to stay away from X-Men right now because there are a lot of X-Men ones that I love.
What did you start? What one did you already start one?
Yeah, I did. The Parallax was actually a evil entity instead of Hal Jordan going bad and killing his friends.
Okay.
For me, again, this is a spoiler, but it's Alan Moore's Anatomy Lesson. That to me is one of the biggest shocking moments in the history of comics. That changed so much. And Anatomy Lesson is issue 21 of Swamp Thing. And it's where you learn that the character that you've been reading about, Alec Holland, wasn't alive anymore. That it was just a plant that was alive and thought it was Alec Holland. And the plant learns that Alec Holland is dead and he has a mental breakdown. Like he's freaking out. Like, oh my God, it's such a wonderful, wonderful story if you've not read it. And I hope I did not spoil it for anybody. And this is it, like that, you know, that is watching this. But oh my gosh, that story redefined comics. And you know, and to build from that was his second issue, right? Yeah, because gets killed in the first one when he comes in. Yeah, what was it called? Loose Ends or something like that. And then you just come in and like blow everybody's mind that was reading that comic book. Like, what? This dude has been dead? I thought Odfel was chugging a beer.
No, it's just water.
It would be okay. Many people who talk to me want to chug alcohol, so it's okay. You know, the more I talk, the more they want to drink. It's an interesting thing. Alan Moore really does a great job with it, even though, like, if your memories are a perfect copy of someone, then what is the difference between you and them? Frankly, the X-Men are going through this right now because if an X-Man is resurrected, they're actually a mental and physical copy of the dead one. But they're indistinguishable in that regard, pretty much. So, Moore did a really good job with that one.
I think it really changed comics for the best. Like, I love that. Like, because it made you think, oh my God, comics are so awesome. These things can be as good as movies and TV shows and books. Like, that is deep. And then where he goes from like body horror, oh my gosh, to where he takes it, Parliament of Trees and all that. Oh, dude, that was so good. That's definitely one of my freaking favorite retcons of all time.
I think it's become the definitive Swamp Thing story as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think most people would say that.
There kind of is Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and all other Swamp Things, yeah.
Yeah. Like, whenever I hear it mentioned, unless it's like an event where he had like a key role, I always hear that one mentioned first.
It is, and it rightly deserves it. It's quite excellent.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Omni Dog, what's next on your list, buddy?
Well, I have some serious ones, but I have one that absolutely none of you were alive at the time this happened.
Okay.
So first of all, it's not going to impact your lives the way it impacted me as a 12-year-old or an 11. I was about 11 when this happened. So this is back in the 60s.
Mhm.
Are you still recovering?
Well, this show made me relive it. Yeah.
Oh, you're
I
welcome.
had forgotten it. I just now remembered it. This is the first. This may be the first, one of the first retcons ever, except for I guess Stan Lee killing Bucky in the first place or whatever happened. But in the 60s, we all knew Barry Allen got his powers because of a lightning storm. Lightning struck, knocked the chemicals off him onto him, and he developed super speed.
Is this that little wizard called Mopey or whatever?
Yes. Now I fully love the whole idea of the Speed Force, and now all the Flash characters are tapped into the Speed Force. That's a great retcon. I have no problem with that. It makes a lot more sense than just a random. But that's all they had in the 60s. They had a radioactive spider, and they had lightning washing him with chemicals that somehow gave him super speed. And in one of the later issues, like 170 something, this Mopey character shows up, and he's some gorky little dude, like an angel from heaven, or I can't even remember. I tried to block it out of my mind for the past
little wizard imp thing.
Sorry?
He's just some little wizard imp thing.
Yeah, he's like, and he shows up and says, I'm the one that caused the lightning to strike the chemicals and created you, Flash. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I was 11 years old, and even I knew it was a crappy retcon that was awful. Why even introduce this? Why say it? What's the point of this? Who the hell
You're saying this is a one you
Mopey?
enjoy.
This isn't the Mopey comic. This is Barry Allen Flash. What is going on here? I hated that
So you're
thing.
saying
I've
you
always
did or
hated
didn't?
it.
Oh, you hated it. Okay,
Oh,
well,
I-
okay, so you didn't like this one.
No, this is I know you probably are still doing one, but I couldn't help myself. It just like I vomited it up because I had to get it out of my system.
Popped out of me like a chest burster.
Yeah.
I think the funniest thing is that Mopey has been disavowed, but I did love he shows up in the Ambush Bug comic when they're cycling through all these odd bits of DC continuity, and here comes Mopey. And he says, I'm the one who sent the lightning bolt that gave Barry Allen his powers, and they've disavowed me, but I did it, and it's right there, and it is pretty hilarious. It is a dreadful idea, but that was the 60s for you.
There was no reason for it. So that's the first retcon I ever experienced. So
you love that one,
and you
That's
never
what you
forget your first time.
well, that's one way of saying it. Yeah.
Were you deflowered by Mopey?
Oh, that's a book title.
No.
I was deflowered by Mopey.
Well, I have nothing to
Right.
add to that because all I don't think I even made it that far into my reading of Flash. Like that's Silver Age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty early.
And that's the stuff that I read because I loved Carmine Infantino's art, and that's what got me into that character as a kid. And so I have a love for Silver Age Flash that I can totally understand why somebody else couldn't get into it. Modern day readers would probably have a tough time with it, and I don't necessarily recommend they go back and read it. But the art was so fluid and beautiful for the time; it was just gorgeous. And that's what I really, really cared about.
Well, Mopey was probably intended as a sort of Mxyzptlk,
Yeah.
Batmite character. But Mxyzptlk and Batmite weren't really in their origin stories like they tried to make Mopey. But no, it seemed like he was either disavowed or forgotten about very quickly.
Thank goodness.
I will check and see if he has a Who's Who entry, because I'm not sure he does.
I mean,
I wanna-
bring up Ambush Bug, that's amazing. Ambush Bug, I don't think I even have read a single comic of.
Oh, the early miniseries are hilarious.
Yeah, those are good. I did read those. Least favorite, Wanda and Pietro's heritage. I can't even keep up.
On my
That's
list.
also on my list.
Ooh.
I can't keep up. I don't know if that was one of my worst ones. I just I can't keep up if they're Magneto's kids. I made a video and somebody was like, they're not Magneto's kids. I'm like, what? They're back to not being Magneto's kids again.
Shockingly, Mopey does not have an entry in Who's Who.
At this
Odfel.
point, I just headcanon. I suspend the disbelief. They're Magneto's kids. I don't care.
Because
that was from Axis.
That was from Axis. I think it was the last time. But it's one of those things, that has come and gone for ages. Like, they're his kids. And then they stayed his kids for a long time. Same thing with Polaris. I can't remember who the last person that said it was his kid. It might have been Chuck Austin, honestly, like during his run. He was like, no, it's his kid.
I think she is his kid still in the...
yes. I don't think they ever said...
Polaris is his daughter in the Krakoa stories.
Oh, yeah, because in X Factor, she's talking about it. All right, Odfel, what do you got? Any mopey stories? What do you got?
Well, so speaking of the High Evolutionary and the 60s, I'll skip to one that I read today. Someone can fact check me if I'm wrong, but this is one I had no idea was even a retcon or a concept. And it is Spider-Woman's origin story.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Apparently, in her very first issue, she was actually a spider that was turned into a woman, which is wild because I've always known her origin. And what apparently, like issue 2 or 3 or something, very soon after reset it as, is that it was a kind of science experiment with, I believe, her father and like a blood transfusion. I don't know if they've retconned it since. Her newest book run, it was something with spider blood and her father in the military with science division. But apparently that's kind of the narrative from that point on as soon as issue 2. But yeah, issue 1, she was just a spider turned into a person, which is one of the most cursed things I've ever heard. And I think they quickly realized that if it was that quick of a turnaround, but it was so quick of one, I had never heard about it until I was looking at stuff today.
I didn't know about that one.
Her origin story is fairly tormented. Yeah.
Here's a question. Thank you for the super chat, Landon. Thoughts on the dead mom retcon and Flash Rebirth? Have you guys read Flash Rebirth?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've always had kind of mixed feelings about that. Because of course the dead mom, for Barry Allen, the dead mom element also shows up in the TV show. And on the one hand, it is a very powerful story. And it gives Barry motivation to change time and all this. So you can see how it's introduced. On the other hand, I worry that it takes this character and saddles him with such tragedy. That's a bit hard to escape from that. Because even in the TV show, they have to address that no matter what he does, he's never going to get over his mother's death. Period. The end. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that one.
Not many people know that Mopey killed Barry Allen's mom. So
please stop talking about Mopey. Okay.
Excuse me.
I'm not sure how I feel about Flash Rebirth. I enjoyed aspects of it. And I assume you're talking about the Flash Rebirth miniseries, right? Not the Flash Rebirth ongoing series, which happens after New 52. You're talking about Flash Rebirth where Barry Allen came back. So yeah, I mean, it was, to me, it didn't hit me as much as Green Lantern Rebirth. I don't know why, and it could have been because to me Barry Allen had been dead since I started collecting comics, so my Flash was Wally West growing up, and this guy just came back from the dead, and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that's cool. I hope there's 2 Flashes running around, and but that never happened.
This is a bigger discussion, but I'm Team Wally West as well. Now, certainly, the TV show has been very successful, and a lot of people have, enjoyed Barry and have made it work. I prefer Wally West.
When you mentioned Odfel, when you mentioned Jessica Drew, there were other retcons with that particular character. One of them being like her comatose state and her death in an issue of Avengers.
They've kind of jerked her around a lot because she was like the key factor of Secret Wars because she was dead.
And I want to say the next time she came back. Oh no, was it Stern that brought her back, and then she showed up in Wolverine with depowered? Like she didn't have any powers. She
I'm
just showed
trying
up
to
as
remember because they brought her back at some point just before the run where she was pregnant, but it was soon before that, I believe. Because they kind of just ignored all of that in that run. Oh,
okay.
But I'm trying to remember.
No, neither one of you two have brought up any Legion of Superheroes retcons. Like those guys have gone through several retcons, including one of the biggest ones that I actually really liked during 5 years later.
There have been a few. Most of them Legion's been more defined by its reboots.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think it's people keep saying that Legion is confusing because it's so many characters. It's actually not confusing because of the characters. The reboots have made it confusing. Because you're like, okay, well, Princess Projectra is this here, but a snake here, and it's just that's too much. But there are a few reboots, or retcons, but yeah.
I really liked the 5 years later retcon. I thought that one worked really well. The original Legion of superheroes.
Do you mean with Lightning Lad, or do you mean
like showing up in the middle of Giffin's run?
Oh,
remember, you think you're reading about like the characters all grown up and it's all dark. And then about 2.5 years later, the original Legion was
the young clones come back. Or
that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was a really good one. Not my choice, but that was a really good retcon. Whose turn is it? Lars?
We're now into the ones that make us throw up. Is that what we're doing?
No, not yet. I've got several good, but we're staying positive right now.
I have a couple good ones, just so you know. Okay, it's not all hate.
See what I mean? Let's keep going with the good ones.
If we're saying positive, I do think the change later on, because originally when Alfred was introduced, he was not. Oh, did I take one away from you?
Yeah, now I'm down to like one thing.
Okay. I said that.
Oh no.
I did think that. They originally introduced Alfred as he just came to work for Bruce Wayne. And then later it was decided, he knew Bruce's parents, and he's actually been around a lot longer than that. And I think that does give the character a lot more pathos than he otherwise would have. You kind of later on get the same thing with Leslie Tompkins. There is something quite touching about the way Leslie knew Bruce's parents. Ergo, Bruce will kind of listen to her when he won't, or give her respect when he gives nobody else respect. So yeah, I think that was an improvement.
I just need to add that relationship was solidified in the now classic Batman Year 2.
Exactly right.
I don't think that book gets enough respect by some of the hosts here on the channel. But yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, of course. Once you learn that Mopey killed Aaron, that changes Batman's world quite considerably. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to keep it in the topic of Leslie because Leslie Tompkins was a character. Yeah, like she kind of took over like the role of mother for Bruce. She was retconned into his history, but one of the things they did, and it pissed me the hell off, was during the War Crimes and War Crimes crossover. There was this thing where Stephanie Brown was going on as Robin, and then she gets kidnapped by Black Mask, and he tortures her, and she ends up dying later on. And then at the end, you find out that it was Leslie Tompkins that killed her because she thought this was her way to make Bruce stop like getting teenagers to help him. Like no more Robins, no more teenage deaths. Oh, dude. I was like, what? Leslie Tompkins killed Stephanie Brown. Now, later on, it was retcon that she did not, in fact, kill Stephanie Brown, but instead had faked her death. And so she could go and live a normal life.
Wasn't it also that she was trying to shock Bruce into realizing that his associates could get killed?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like no more use of teenagers.
Yeah,
that was the original idea. But then, yes, it was like she was no longer a murderer. She was clear of her crimes because Stephanie came back. She did not die. She was in fact living a happy life. Oh, dude, that one pissed me off when they did it, and then they brought it back and said, "Okay, we're fixing it. Sorry about that. Here we go."
It was not a good idea. Yeah.
I am Batman Year 2's strongest soldier. Yes, absolutely.
Only soldier.
That shut up.
There aren't even dozens of you. There's one of you.
Me, Mike W. Barr, and Todd McFarlane, and Alan Davis all love that story. You can go to hell. All right, Jess. What other positive retcon do you have?
They've all been taken. Batman is out.
You said you had 2 more.
Yeah, they got taken. Alfred as.
Oh, okay. What was the other one?
Have you already talked about Red Hood being better than Jason Todd?
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. I liked. First of all, I liked the introduction of the Red Hood storyline because you didn't know who he was. He was extremely well trained and fought Batman to a standstill several times. I didn't mind it. I was shocked when I found out who it was. I liked the fact that he used weapons, wasn't afraid to use his weapons. He was a huge improvement over Jason Todd. I did not vote for the death of Jason Todd.
I did. I hated that guy.
That was just a way for you to explain all those 900 numbers on your parents' phone bill.
It was 75 cents. That didn't get me anything. Except that first hour. You better make it anyway. Or first minute. Boy, kids these days have no idea how good they got it.
And then I enjoyed the only thing I've actually enjoyed by Scott Lobdell was Rebirth, Red Hood and the Outlaws. That was one of my favorite Rebirth books. But then when the Outlaws left, it was just more Red Hood. New 52 Red Hood wasn't that good. But when they introduced him pre-New 52 and brought him back, I thought I thought the mystery and who he turned out to be was all really good comics. And I thought it brought up, I felt it was a good retcon. I was happy to see that he was back and totally kicking ass. And now he's a member of the Bat family. And accepted, and I really like his character now way more than I ever did.
Okay, yeah, no, he was a great character. That was Judd Winnick. Like I said, that was around the same time that Winter Soldier came back to.
Oh, right,
Marvel
yeah, you
Comics.
did say that.
It was so strange. Yeah, that's a good choice. I like that choice.
I didn't read Brubaker's Captain America until earlier this year, so I sort of knew all about it, but I didn't know just how great it was until I finally read it earlier this year.
Yeah. I mean, there are powerful reasons why they got rid of Jason Todd in the first place. Jason Todd, if we're being honest, didn't really work as Robin. And then they did Tim Drake and showed, it's not that you don't, as Denny O'Neil said, we discovered that people did like Robin. They just didn't like Jason Todd as Robin. Well, but you're right. That I think they're just a stronger version of the character.
And how secure is the Batmobile if a kid is stealing a tire off it and gets discovered that way? That needs to be retcon because I don't think anybody can just boost the Batmobile's tires.
No, but maybe there's some sort of sensor that detects that it's teenage, miscreant, and it doesn't like flame him alive. As opposed to the Joker tries to steal it and it flames him alive.
Are you all in the chat talking about the Tommyverse? Because that ending of Saint Elsewhere,
Tommyverse is quite fun.
Oh my gosh, how many shows are there because of Munch from Homicide?
Oh yeah,
like 87.
Mad About You, Friends, ER, The Wire, X-Files. It's crazy how many of these shows are all in the Tommyverse. Great choice, man. Great choice. Odfel, come on, let's bring it back home. Let's bring it back to one of the greatest retcons in X-Men history.
So, yeah, and it is X-Men.
Oh, okay, good.
But this is one, the longer it goes on, the more I have mixed feelings. But as it was happening and the kind of mini that it was enclosed in, I think it was jaw-dropping and excellent. And that would be the Moira McTaggart retcon of her being a mutant in House and Powers of X.
And now I think positive retcons.
Yeah.
The other one.
That was the one. That's the one you came with.
I got nothing but angry retcons after
Oh
this.
man, okay.
Same. Honestly, this is my last one. I
Okay.
have mixed feelings about how Krakoa's gone the longer it's been on, but House and Powers was such a good 12-piece unit, and I thought that her being the catalyst of it was interesting because she's been in the center of so many X-Men stories. It just made sense, and it was one of those ones that was so easy to believe, and she was such an interesting protagonist to follow through her 9 lives. I think we got 9 because I think she's on life 10. And I just thought it was really well done and really interesting to read.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I agree. It was really well done. Like yourself, unfortunately, it was really good. I think after Hickman leaves, I don't like what they've done with her after Hickman leaves. I thought they took a very interesting, nuanced character and have kind of ruined her. But while Jonathan Hickman was around, yes, she was fantastic.
I don't even know if I liked what he did with her in Inferno. But
Inferno's when I started to be like,
and definitely in Death.
No, I feel like he's still running her with
Wolverine really cemented that she is now a villain. So
and
much so that she's wearing Banshee skin. And I was like, whoa, dude, that is dark. I will say that I am with you. Like X-Men, ups and downs with the retcons. There have been some horrible ones, which are on my list today. A lot of horrible ones, but there have been some that work, and this one to me worked.
Yeah.
I thought it was perfect. Like for somebody that reads X-Men and treats them as their second family, to me it's like walking on eggshells when you're coming into my playground and try to mess with my toys. So this guy Hickman, I'm like, okay, he did beautiful things with Fantastic Four. His Avengers were ups and downs. No, he's gonna try to do some godlike things to my X-Men. But I loved it because he did the research, he did the homework, he went back, talked about the thing between her and Legion and Destiny. Holy crap! That issue where Destiny dies made so much more sense. Like Claremont and Hickman got together back then in some kind of weird wormhole and had a drink, and Hickman threw this idea at him at a bar. He's like, that's a good way to kill off Destiny for no reason. Yeah, it just freaking worked. I loved it. Love that.
I even loved what he did with Moira in Inferno. I thought even there he was still writing her with some facets and some nuance. And the thing was, when she left at the end of Inferno, I thought, okay, in a way that's the perfect departure. Doubtless she'll come back, but we don't need to see her for 2, 3, 4 years. She's gone off wherever, and then they'll bring her back. And then to bring her back within 5 seconds in Wolverine and just treat her like trash. That did bother me. But the post-Hickman stories have actually been quite good, despite that.
I like that the fact that I needed to read those issues where she was, retaining the knowledge of her previous incarnations, and that was sort of her mutant power. I had to read those a few times to really grasp it, and I thought, that's good. That means this is a multi-layered story that has been written really smartly, and I need to wrap my head around this whole new concept. So I appreciated the fact that it was written so well that it took me in, I don't know, I read it 3 or 4 times before I finally said, okay, I totally get it now. This is really cool. It's a really interesting concept, and she is now a super important part of the X-Men universe. I really dig it. So I agree with Odfel about that, since it was on my list.
You wrote "Thank Phil." That's adorable. Okay. Lars, you got any more positives? I've got a lot more, but I can do one more.
Well, as long as we're talking about Legion, I will mention a positive in the 5 years later. 5 years later is, I do like 5 years later Legion. There's some things that don't work. I thought that the how should I say this? The retcon spin put on Matter Eater Lad was quite fun. And I really enjoyed the character. And that, in a way, is a pure retcon, because they were doing all these things like changes in continuity and giving an in-universe explanation. And with Matter Eater Lad, there kind of isn't one. There's just, oh, well, he was always like this. And I don't know. I thought every time Matt Lad came in, I thought he was just great. Not that I never disliked him. I didn't dislike him, but I thought that new spin on the character really worked.
Matter Eater Lad. Jess, any thoughts about Matter Eater Lad retcon?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we just mean that he became a more knowingly satirical and self-aware comedic character. That's what we mean. Jess, go ahead.
Well, I'll never rest until Bouncing Boy is brought into this, and Pharaoh Lad's brought back. No, that's one of the all-time deaths. You can't be Uncle Ben, Batman's parents, and Pharaoh Lad, who died saving this universe and needs proper respect. And Omar never gives it to Pharaoh Lad, which is an outrage. You can't bring back Pharaoh Lad, so that can't be right.
Came back in Final Night. Like the crappy Final Night.
If he came back in Blackest Night, then that would be cool.
He would have come back as a zombie and stayed evil.
Zombie Pharaoh Lad. Now that's an action figure I would buy.
I think for my last, it's hard because I have a lot of favorite ones. I think I've talked about how X-Men, and you're going to see some bad ones in there, have ups and downs. But I think one of my favorite X-Men retcons, I really did like the idea, by the way, of Wolverine having bone claws. That was really cool. It was a nice, it wasn't adamantium. It was actually bone claws laced with adamantium. But one of my favorite ones has to be Magneto. Magneto in the 80s. Like, what Claremont did with Magneto in the 80s solidified who Magneto was and who people think he is. He wasn't like that in the 60s and 70s, right? He was a guy that was like trying to steal rockets from a nuclear power plant or nuclear base. And then it wasn't until the 80s that there was some retcons being done about his history, his past. And one of the biggest things was that he was a Holocaust survivor. And I mean, it gave the character so much depth that you were kind of siding with him. You can kind of see why he thought the way that he did. It was wonderful, like the things that Claremont was doing. So I think, I can't help but think of like those things as retcons, because in a way, like, that is a different Magneto than the Magneto established before, right? The Magneto post, what was his name? Mutant Alpha, right? And then Moria erased him, and he escaped a little bit crazier and younger and a lot hotter looking with a big chest that, Rogue's touching on the cover of 274, old Silver Fox Magneto. But yeah, like seriously, those 80s Magneto issues or classic X-Men, Magneto, just freaking awesome.
Yeah,
loved it. All right.
Wait, okay, I have a quick question for you. Now, Did Cullen Bunn write the Magneto series, which went in depth into his history as a Holocaust survivor, or who wrote that? I feel like it's right here, and I just can't.
What's the name of it? Are you talking about Magneto test?
Oh yeah, no, Cullen Bunn did write this. This is the only thing I've read, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, no, that's solid. Yeah, and it does go into it.
But who? But who was it? Chris Claremont that introduced the concept? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That he had a wife, a kid that got killed in front of him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's he did a lot for that character and made that character who everybody thinks was that character from the beginning. Like, and it wasn't the case. It took 20 years to make that character who he was. All right. So now we're moving on to our least favorite ones. And out of curiosity from the chat, what are some of your favorite retcons? And don't forget to smash that like button, please. Let me grab this really quick and change the banner. Y'all chose some good ones. I have a lot more, but maybe we'll do this again. Our least favorite retcons. Woo! It's weird because retcons really piss me off for the most part, but there are some good ones. Boy, then there's some really bad ones. Let's see here. Favorite Jeff Johns, including elements from Tales of the Green Lantern Corps during his Green Lantern Corps. Absolutely. Like Alan Moore. Winter Soldier, best ever retcon. Our buddy Larry's Library. Bone Claws. Favorite retcon, Superman Rebirth with John Kent being born. Oh, what a good one.
Yeah.
Cat being in ice is one of my favorites. That's absolutely a good one too. Like, how do you bring this character back? Favorite Bucky being brought back. Favorite retcon was when Omnidog joined this other show after Omar said he wouldn't be here. It's not much of a. That's a surprise. That's a surprise.
I retconned myself into this.
We're gonna do our least favorites now, but I was asking the chat what their favorite ones were. Winter Soldier and Moira. Basically anything Jeff Johns does. I'm almost there with you, except I don't agree with Joker. 3 Jokers. Because that kind of ruined one of my favorite stories of all time. My favorite
that's a bad retcon. 3 Jokers.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I'm kind of pissed off that we all agreed with each other. We were all like, "Yay, good job! That's a good choice." Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump somebody's crap, like, "No, that's a horrible choice. That retcon sucked." So I can't wait to disagree on this list because some of y'all may like some of the stuff I picked. Burn making.
I second.
What's that?
Someone in chat said their favorite was the gayification of Harley Quinn, and I agree. That's one of the best things they've ever done with her.
That's gotta be Bar.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, you hear
Harley and Ivy have been one of the best things for her character that they've ever done.
I have a Harley Ivy shirt coming for Christmas that my daughter's going to give me.
Burn making Krypton cold and distant was
They're
bad, but clearly influenced by Donnerman. Favorite retcon, Omar actually enjoys the Alpha Omni request. I do not. No. Burn explaining Namor's mood swings. You know, Burn did something really good. I forgot about that. Like Iron Fist. Iron Fist coming back. Alan Moore. Swamp Thing. I don't know if they're considered technically retcons, but Untold Tales of Spider-Man's with, yeah, those are kind of retcons a little bit. Least favorite, all of Wonder Girl's different origins. Who the hell is Donna Troy? What's up, Joe Gus? And he's saying John Kent. So, okay, yes, it was Bar. The gayification of Harley.
The gayification. I love
that.
that.
I don't even know. Is that a word?
I don't even know.
It is now. That's so funny.
Firefly's reinvention and Nightfall. It's funny hearing you guys talk about retcons and the time effort writers used to put into the character nowadays. Changes are sudden, done in one panel, and little to no effort. Well, and that's what pisses me off about bad retcons. It was like the writers just like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do with this character. All right. Besides, we didn't mention Speed Force.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Manhattan being behind everything. Ooh.
I mentioned that when I talked about Mopey. That the Speed Force was a good retcon.
But Darkseid being trained by a guy named Stick. Oh, I thought you said I read that as Darkseid Daredevil. Yes, that was mentioned.
I'm this powerhouse that is Darkseid, and there's someone goes, "Here's how you use this stick," and he's like, "So what? I'm Darkseid."
Shut up! I misread that. Banner has is that the dissociative identity disorder? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
From childhood abuse. Yep. A story that Barry Windsor Smith did called Monsters, and of course Bill Mantlo used it for his run. Oh, aging up, John broke.
Well, of course, Peter David ran with that idea. Peter David was
absolutely.
Like, Bruce would have turned out with more than one personality anyway, and the Gamma Bomb just kind of brought that out.
Favorite, all the retcons of Wally West killing people. Why, Robert? This is a positive and honest community. Why did you do that? All right, let's go ahead and talk about our least favorite ones. And oh my gosh, this is going to be a long episode. But let me see. I'm gonna ladies first, and again, spoilers in case you haven't read some of these. But these are some of our least favorites, and to talk about them, we have to talk about spoilers. So just keep that in mind. All right,
she's ready.
Cracking your knuckles, cracking those knuckles. Woo!
So many of these make me mad.
Oh, somebody pissed me off. Go ahead.
I think I'll start with this one because it's recent and it still makes me mad. Is Dan Slott's retcon of Franklin Richards being a mutant?
Oh,
and the most recent. Well, I don't know if it's the most recent Fantastic Four anymore. I don't know if he's still writing it, but that made me so upset because they had everything set up, everything was great, and I feel like what ended up happening on the writing room floor was Dan Slott wanting to not deal with Hickman. and going, no, he's not a mutant, because Hickman had mentioned Richards a few times, and I was excited to see where they were going with it, and then nowhere. And that one's just, I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I hated that retcon.
As a fan of Rachel and Franklin Richards in a possible future called Days of Future Present, I was not a fan of them making him not a mutant. That really pissed me off, especially when Cyclops already established that they were coming back for him.
Yeah.
Within like a year, not even a year, I'm sorry, like 6 months.
Doesn't like the gate know that he's a mutant when he goes through? The gate lets him through.
Well, apparently their justification was he just had really strong reality altering powers, so he was altering his own DNA to be a mutant, but when his powers ran out, he couldn't do that anymore. It was convoluted. I was not a fan. It didn't line up for me.
I haven't read it, but I hate it already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the lowest points off that run. And that run, again, ups and downs. Yeah.
I liked a good portion of it, but yeah.
I've not actually finished the Dan Slott run on Fantastic Four. I didn't get there. I'm like the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trawl. If I can't see the retcon, it can't see me. Okay. And the thing is, I tried reading Jonathan Hickman's run on Fantastic Four, but then Omnibus 1 sold out immediately, and I'm like, okay, I'll just have to wait. So
wait, it's out already? It's out of print?
It's out of print. Yeah. Oh, okay. I shouldn't say it sold out immediately. It's just that by the time I decided to commit to buying Jonathan Hickman Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman Omnibus 1, it had sold out, and now it's going for like 140 bucks.
That sounds like a you problem.
It is.
Right away.
I waited too long. That is entirely my fault. Yeah.
If you're not watching Near Mint Condition when the guy that runs it tells you, hey.
Well, like I say, I hadn't committed to it because one can't read or buy everything. But
okay, touche.
That's my fault.
Yeah, those reprints come and go.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. What's that, Odfel?
I was gonna say someone in chat has a really good one because I like skimming while listening. I'll
go back
to RC's backstory being undone was a good retcon, and before it disappears into the void. I agree with that. That's a really good one.
Good one. All right, buddy. Lars, you're up. I agree with Odfel, by the way, and I know you guys haven't read it, but it pissed me off when I found out that Franklin wasn't a mutant.
Yeah. The one that really did manage to stab me right in the left ventricle was Maxwell Lord.
Okay.
Because, and I remember when that issue came out, it came out like 2004, 2005. Because first of all, and that is Jeff Johns' fault. First of all, the idea that we, the readership, wanted to see Maxwell Lord go evil and blow Ted Kord's brains out was just a terrible. Who was going, yes. I think that was a terrible misstep. But also it was worse because he tried to say that Max Lord had been evil from the very beginning. This wasn't even a change of character. It's like, oh, well, he was poisoned from the very start, which is just complete nonsense. And like, I'm not saying that Max is the most important character to the Justice League International era, but he's a pretty important character. And if you were fond of that era like myself, you know, when you think of Justice League International, Max Lord is there as part of the process. But here comes Jeff Johns to say he's always been corrupt, he's always been evil, and the character has never recovered. Because now he's just kind of bog standard capitalist evil. And it's like, okay. So yeah, it's a retcon. It made no sense at all. And it took what was an interesting character and has, I think, made him just kind of a bit pathetic.
But he got redeemed in Wonder Woman 19. Oh, no, he didn't.
I don't want to talk about that movie. That movie.
Yeah, sorry. I only brought it up for comedic.
Oh my god,
effect.
I forgot
sorry.
that. He was in the movie.
Well, okay, and some people in the chat are saying he's always been corrupt. No, I mean, he's always been, yeah, you're right. From the very beginning, Max was portrayed as a character who, he was actually trying to be a good guy. He just wasn't very good at it.
Yeah.
And he had to learn as he went along to be a good man. But now they're saying, oh, from the very start, though, he was just lying. It's like, no. That's
I think he was a very slimy. Like I think that's the way I would describe him. He wasn't evil. Oh my gosh, I forgot about the crossing. That's one of my favorite retcons of Iron Man. Just to piss people off.
But Max Lord, that is the only time, because I think it was in Countdown to Final Crisis of all things.
Yeah,
and
I was revealed.
I read it.
No, Sacrifice. It was revealed in Sacrifice that he was controlling Superman's brain. Remember going?
That comes later. But Countdown to Final Crisis, when you find out Max Lord was evil, he was always evil. Right. And by the way, Blue Beetle's brains are splattered all over the wall. It is, and I was so upset. I actually took that. I'm not proud of this, but I took that issue and I fed it into the paper shredder.
Oh, that's the issue you shredded?
Yeah. I was so upset.
Unacceptable. You could have donated it to a library.
And then they would have read it. No, remember, if you can't see the retcon, it can't see you.
You could have drowned it in root beer.
Yeah, that's the key.
Well, Countdown to Infinite Crisis. No, thank you. Of course, you're right. Countdown to Infinite Crisis is what it was called. Yeah. Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Countdown to Infinite Crisis.
Horrible.
For me, it is something right along the same lines. I've hated this story from the get-go for several reasons. And it is a fan favorite. So I think Jess agrees with me. I'm curious what Odfel and Lars think.
Probably the last thing on my list.
Identity Crisis.
Oh.
Identity Crisis pissed me off from the very beginning. Yeah. People really like this series, but my issue with it was so the retcon is that Dr. Light, this goofy Teen Titans villain, broke into the Justice League satellite headquarters and raped Sue Dibney at one time in the past. That's the retcon. That's a bad retcon. But even worse to me was the idea that Black Canary, the Atom, Hawkman, Barry Allen, Flash, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and Green Arrow allowed Satana to mind wipe Dr. Light, which is how that's why they said he was goofy, and mind wipe Sue Dibney. No, they just told her to be quiet.
That's even worse.
They didn't even mind wipe her. They told her.
Yeah, I don't recall.
They took an oath to not say anything about her being raped by Dr. Light. Like these are superheroes, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, how is no one talking about this? Because I remember people at the comic book store were like, this is one of the best, darkest, most realistic stories. And there are aspects of it that Brad Meltzer that I did enjoy. But man, that one I was like, there's no way in hell Barry Allen and Green Lantern stood by, or Hal Jordan were like, yeah, Sue, let's never talk about this. And then the mind wiped Batman. They mind wiped anybody that ever found out. It was just one bad thing after another. Now, granted, if not for that, we wouldn't have had the Crisis of Conscience, which is one of the best Justice League stories. We wouldn't have had the Anatomy issue in JSA. And honestly, that kind of leads into Infinite Crisis, which is my favorite DC event. But holy crap, did that make no sense to me. I understand that these things happen in the real world. I understand that, in order to show how good the good guys are, you have to show dark elements in there. But to use that in just kind of a throw-off way really pissed me off, especially with some of my favorite characters. And then the whole goddamn Deathstroke thing, like the whole Justice League had the dog pile on him, and I'm like, what? Nightwing took down Deathstroke by himself. Why does it take all the Justice League up? But anyway, that miniseries pissed me off, but that was one thing that
then there was Adam's wife who became a complete psycho.
And killing it with a flamethrower.
Yeah.
I think my favorite element in there, and you have to allow that Jean Loring is just completely insane, but her excuse was, well, I took a flamethrower with me just in case.
Who carries a flamethrower just in case it goes wrong?
In case of what?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't like carrying some Advil, in your pocket or your purse.
Well, I always take a flamethrower with me just in case, so I don't blame her a bit.
I do not. Nor do I condone anyone that takes a flamethrower with them. And then Batman, the sixth greatest detective. in the DC universe. Could not figure it out. Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Terrific couldn't figure it out.
There was no character in that book that wasn't mischaracterized. It was none of them acted the way we had become used to their acting. They were all acting completely out of character, like somebody never did any research and just decided to write them however they wanted. And then to introduce this horrible rape from this D-list Dr. Light villain. Anytime you introduce rape in a comic book as a way to progress the story, that is unconscionable to me. That is just not, that is having like a black soul. That's just not being tuned into how horrible rape really is. And it's to progress a story forward like that, and then to have no consequence. That was one of the worst things I've ever read. I couldn't wait to sell it to somebody on eBay for $100. So I got it out of my life, and it was awful. And the art was awful, which shouldn't even count. But this was written by somebody, and I know I've read some Brad Meltzer JSA stuff that's actually good, or Justice League stuff, but this was awful. This was all mischaracterized characters, and I don't, what they did to Sue Dibney is just, it was not. It's not cool. I don't know how to say it's not cool without sounding stupid, but it's not cool. You don't do that in comic books.
Well, let's agree that these are, worthy and important topics that you can write about and can address, certainly.
100%.
On this particular occasion, it was done in such a ham-fisted fashion. You were left kind of reeling, going, what the hell's going on? And it was also the spark in this era where they decided to take not just these characters, but there was a trend of taking heroic characters and just dumping on them.
Yeah.
It's not long after this that Jeff Johns introduces Superboy Prime, or changes Superboy Prime, and thinking that cute Superboy, kid you like, he's a complete another psychopath, and he's just going to murder as many heroes as humanly possible in his violent mission. And you're like, what the hell's going on? So yeah, it started a bad trend, really.
I think you're right. And then that's what Infinite Crisis was. It was the fix to this. I mean, that was us, right? Like that was the reader standing there as Superboy Prime and Superman, Earth
Golden Age Superman,
Earth 2 Superman. Yes, Golden Age Superman. Standing there going, wait a minute, these are the heroes that we let live, and look how dark they are. Wonder Woman's over there snapping people's necks, and they let this thing. It's just really interesting how that came out, and then we had like a lighter tone to DC Comics afterwards. But there are some really powerful lines in Infinite Crisis, and yes, some of the choices we have, some people aren't going to agree with some of these. Some people really enjoy. I know several of my friends that love Identity Crisis. They're like, how could you not like it, man? It's like a true crime story with superheroes. Yeah, but you throw superheroes into that mix, and like I said, these things happen. Like, the thing that happened to Sue happens in comics and manga that I've read, but I think it's handled a little bit better there than it was here.
It was a cascading sea of bad decisions is the problem.
One thing. No, we can just review Identity Crisis.
Well, especially characters like Black Canary who come right off the pages of Birds of Prey are telling me, she's like, this is a great idea. Let's have Zatanna do this. Like, it just doesn't track.
Right. Not at all. Then that's part of all those characters not acting like themselves.
Yeah.
What's up, Brazil? Jess, what do you got? Let's get in here. Let's do it. Let's do it, Jess. Keep the hate going.
We all love Ed Brubaker.
Oh,
however,
yeah, baby, I know where you're going with this.
You already know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going with this.
I don't think first of all, I don't think I think I'm going to say that I think editorial made him do this, or else changed his story, because I can't believe Ed Brubaker would actually write Deadly Genesis, and which has got to be one of the worst X-Men stories I've ever read. I definitely gave that book one of my last root beer baths and dumped root beer all over it, because I wouldn't donate it to a library. I didn't want anybody to read it.
Wait, you've been joking about this. Did you literally dump root beer on comics you didn't like?
Oh yeah, that was my shtick the first 5 years of my channel, or the first 4 years. I would take books that I hated and put them in a bucket and dump root beer all over them. Awful root beer, like A&W Diet root beer.
Oh, that adds insult to injury.
Yeah. Oh, somebody loves Deadly Genesis. Good for
yeah.
you. I hope you enjoy it.
Has a big fan following.
Peace and love. But this retcon of Vulcan being the third Summers brother all of a sudden out of nowhere, and Professor X mind wiping everybody of the events of was it Giant Size X-Men or whatever? Mm-hmm. What did he mind wipe them? Was it Giant Size X-Men?
Mm-hmm. There was a second team,
right? And Vulcan was a terrible person, a terrible character, terrible brother, terrible son, terrible being. And what they did with him in that book made no sense. It offended me. I thought it made me angry. I was like, why am I reading this? This is a waste of my time. I've only got a certain amount of years left on this earth. Why am I reading Deadly Genesis? This guy sucks. I hate Vulcan. I hate what they did with him and everything in that book. So yeah.
What I'm hearing from you is 3 stars out of 5.
I actually like Vulcan. I like characters like Vulcan, like overpowered wuss boys that like,
overcompensating.
Dude, they can't control. I mean, in a way, he's kind of like Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime is like that. Like, has no control over his power. He's a whiny brat, and that's the way Vulcan was. And I like that. What I didn't like is what they did with Professor X. Like, how much of a prick are they gonna make Professor X? Oh, by the way, I had another team. Not only am I in love with Jean when she was a teenager, creep factor.
Oh, I hated that part. Like, why? That?
Yeah. Well, I think that's, for me, that story, somehow in my head, Deadly Genesis is fairly easy to ignore. I don't know why. I can just set it aside. The problem, I think, is what Omar says, that it was, again, this trend of like, oh, you think Charles Xavier is really great, but we're going to show you how crap he is. And, you know, it's like the man who is supposed to embody the vision of mutants and humans living in harmony maybe should be more honorable than not. But it was this concerted effort to show how terrible he was. And yeah, I agree.
I think I appreciate the idea of like where that led to the X-Men in Space saga, and of course War of the Kings, which became a really good story. But I think the basis of it was just so weird and out of nowhere. You know, and then, oh my God, the stupidest way to kill off a character, a Banshee gets hit by a plane. It's like, what? You killed
that was an odd decision because it seemed really disconnected from the rest of the story.
But I mean, at that time they were killing X-Men off in just stupid ways. But that one like made absolutely no sense. I'm like, he can fly or you know, like scream at the plane. Yeah, I'm with you. It's not one of my least favorite ones, but it's definitely not one of my favorite ones.
Well, and you've read a lot more X-Men than I have, so I'm sure you've read.
But there are people that have read a lot of X-Men that love that story. They were like, "Ooh, it gave us Darwin, and without Darwin, we wouldn't have had, you know."
Okay, yeah.
Like get that awesome Peter David X Factor run. And I like Vulcan. I thought Vulcan was an interesting character. I didn't think Hickman ever really got Vulcan's voice down, but I really like what Al Ewing is doing with Vulcan and X-Men Red. That story is kicking ass.
I haven't got there yet.
But it's a good choice, man. It's a good choice. Back to you, Odfel. What do you got?
So, okay. I'm going to pick more like a more recent one just to kind of mix it up because I've got a list that's kind of all over the place. I feel like this has to be prefaced with I'm a very strong Cyclops was right X-Men reader.
Okay.
So this retcon really upset me. I was mad that Cyclops died in the first place, but the entire Cyclops resurrection sequence that they did right before the Hickman run was a
The
mess.
Matthew, who was that? Was that
Matthew Rosenberg, I
Rosenberg,
believe.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just
Dude, don't ruin it. That's that's on the list. Stop it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it was just the Phoenix implant in his heart and him coming back and being like, everything I did was wrong and I don't support any of it and I'm sad now, to him instantly losing an eye and becoming a real Cyclops. Just none of it was hitting for me, because most of his revolution, he was grounded in some sort of belief that was justified and okay. He made oversteps, right? But even at one point, Magneto's like, yeah, this makes sense. You're doing what I could never do. Like, go for it, my dude. So for him to come back and be like, everything I did, I can't believe I would do that, was just like really between kind of how lame the weird Phoenix capsule was to bring him back and that, it just, that entire issue, it, as someone who, yeah, is a very staunch like Cyclops was right fan, I did not like that issue at all. I was happy to have him back, so I felt very bittersweet, but it was just really messy.
I feel like you saying this like reminds me of, oh my gosh, I think we could do a whole episode on stupid X-Men retcons that did not work. Because I mean, there's a lot that just didn't work. It makes no sense, and it didn't add anything to the story.
No.
And honestly, that era of X-Men, I think when Matthew Rosenberg found out he was losing his job, I don't know. Like, I feel like, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm just going to go and start killing off characters left and right, including in a War of the Realms miniseries. Like, the way that Rain died, oh my gosh. Like, one of my favorite characters, I love Wolfsbane. And the way he killed her, I was pissed off.
Mad. Yeah, Rain was messed up.
Please do. Yeah, I'm serious. We can do a whole episode on crap that X-Men have done that makes me mad. Quicksilver and Wanda retcon of there not being mutants. Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier.
Yeah, that's
dude, the way they treated Bishop in Messiah War as a baby killer. Oh my gosh, that one pissed me off. That one pissed me off, man. And I know people love Messiah Complex, Messiah War. I know it's got their fans following, but there were things about that story arc that really made me mad. Lars, what do you got, buddy?
I have two big ones left, and I figure we'll get to the other one. So I will choose. Well, it's following on what we were talking about with Superboy Prime. Wolfman and Perez created a whole bunch of interesting characters, I thought, in Crisis Infinite Earths, and over time they've been treated like absolute trash. It's because Superboy Prime
and Harbinger, those characters.
Superboy Prime was apparently a complete psychopath. Alexander Luthor, we learned in Infinite Crisis, was kind of conniving and I know he's the son of Luthor, but conniving and evil the whole time. They basically made him into a villain. They've made Pariah into a villain recently.
He died in Jeff Loeb's run on Supergirl.
Pariah?
Not Pariah. I'm sorry. He got killed in Villains United.
But they make Alexander Luthor a villain and then kill him. Mm-hmm. They make Superboy Prime. Pariah is now a villain. Or any of these characters, they're either like thoroughly corrupt from the start or dead. I just think there was more to be had there than just treating them that shabbily.
I'm sorry, Lars. I disagree. I actually like Alexander Luthor as a villain, and I like Superboy Prime as a villain.
Okay.
I like the idea. I know what you're saying, and you have more fond memories of pre-Crisis, so that's another thing to keep in mind.
Partly, I think it's also just to the point that Crisis ended on. When they go off with the Golden Age Superman and Lois, and you just think, oh, these are nice people going off to be nice together. Yeah. And then it turns out, oh, by the way, they're complete nutcases. Well,
for me, it worked because, okay, if I gave up my life, here I am, Superboy. I left my girlfriend back at home. I'm going to go hang out with an old man and his old woman and this dude with red hair. I ain't got no girl. I'm going to be on this floating asteroid for God knows how long. And now you're showing me that, you know, all these characters are turning into anti-heroes, right? Like that's what Alexander Luthor was doing. He was showing him like, this is what's happened to our world. This is what we sacrificed ourselves for. Honestly, that makes sense for him to snap. He's young, so he's very, you know, you can corrupt him really easy. And on top of that, he's got these powers he can't control. If anybody's going to snap, it's that guy, which he does. And I thought that was handled really well. Now, Alexander Luthor, I see what you're saying. You know,
well, and then Pariah 2 of late. You know, it's like
Pariah. I haven't read that. I know that. Okay, during Infinite Crisis, he died in Villains United. He got killed in Villains United.
I think.
But I guess he came back. Like
he's been back. He's in the newest Crisis. He's been back, and he's been the villain. And you know, Pariah had quite a tragic story in the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's like, well, then you just lose all sympathy for him because, like, oh, by the way, he's just a despicable villain.
Dude, what's up, Tommy Vo? How have you been, brother? I haven't seen you for a minute. Worst retcon for Batman. Long Halloween at Retcon year 2. I said what I said. I'm just kidding. It's one of the greatest Batman stories ever. But I hate the fact that it freaking Retcon year 2. I'm trying to think. I really did think that Batman War Games, the one with Leslie, really pissed me off like a lot. I know people are mad at like Tim Drake is my Robin. I love Tim Drake as my Robin, but that Tim Drake's not the same Tim Drake. And I'm not talking about him being bisexual. I'm talking about the fact that in New 52, that's a different Tim Drake. I mean, the whole Red Robin thing, the whole his, you know, even his backstory is different than the Tim Drake I grew up with. So my Tim Drake kind of went the way of Wally West for a while. He just hasn't come back. The Tim Drake that's going on right now is a different Tim Drake.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Worst Batman retcon?
I'm trying to think of one. I'm sure there is one. Go ahead.
I think you've already talked about the Leslie Tompkins one, which I agree with.
Gosh.
I read a lot of Batman peripheral more than Batman, so I'm trying to think.
Yep, I agree, Chris. That was one of the worst ones. Pariah has kind of a Cable advantage as far as being killed and brought back. Okay, that makes sense. I love you, Jim Starlin, but the retcon that is Hunger's existence is something I still don't like. Oh, Starlin. Yeah, he did some things. Hold on a second.
By the way, my objection to the Perez Wolfman characters is it's not even so much that, like, it's an unreasonable interpretation of them. It's just, did we really need to have that? I don't enjoy it at all. But yeah.
I was gonna talk about Three Jokers in a little bit, but we have time.
Yeah, let me just say that I was excited in the New 52 Justice League when Batman discovers that in Metron's chair.
The years in the making.
I was like, his reaction, you know, when he went, "What?" That, to me, that was exciting, and that got handled so poorly.
Was there an explanation for, like, he's in Metron's chair and the chair says, tell me about the Joker. And he goes, well, which one? There's 3. Why doesn't he ask the chair, what do you mean there's 3?
I don't think that was ever talked about until, well, that's what led to.
Why not follow that up?
Well, we thought that was going to be what Rebirth was going to be, and then Absolute Doomsday Clock, or no, Doomsday Clock, sorry, not Absolute Doomsday Clock. But instead, that's what Three Jokers was. So it was, you know, a long time in the making.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And it completely missed the mark, and it should have been like 5 years earlier to explain it. I mean, Doomsday Clock and Three Jokers were way past the time anybody was really interested in those books. They needed to happen closer to the beginning of Rebirth, especially Three Jokers, I think.
I kind of agree with Batman creating Brother Eye, but not for the same reasoning a lot of people do. My reasoning is just like, how the hell does he have so much time to do all of this? Like, him being behind OMAC and all that made no sense. Embarrassing Batman retcon is the change to a specific year one moment in the wildering. Oh, that's one of yours, isn't it, Jess?
Oh, those were the first books I ever root beered, was Cacophony and Widening Gyre.
I like Cacophony. That was the Kevin Smith, right?
He
He's
wrote
coming
both
back
of
to do
those,
another one.
and they were egregious. They were awful, truly awful Batman stories.
Let's see. In Dark Side War, Batman was surprised, but in Three Jokers, Batman said he always knew. Which, again, it's not been stated if Three Jokers is actually canon or if it's in another universe. Like, that's kind of where DC kind of left it. Like, they've never established, oh, this is actually canon. Which, anyway.
I'm slightly embarrassed that I read Three Jokers and my head spun a little bit, and I thought I need to reread this to properly absorb it.
I don't think you should.
Was Doomsday Clock good? I love the creative team. I actually reread it, and I was sick from New York Comic Con. I came back sick, and I was on a lot of medication, and I freaking loved it the second time around. I was like, all of this is making perfect sense.
Send me a case of that medicine, then.
Dude, I was one of these people that's like, you leave Watchmen alone. It doesn't need a movie. It doesn't need a TV show. It doesn't need a sequel. It doesn't need a before Watchmen. Watchmen stands on its own. And when I found out about Doomsday Clock, I was, I'm like, oh, I'm rolling my eyes, but I can only roll them back so much because it's Jeff Johns and I love him. And the first time I read it, as it was coming out, oh my gosh, and there were so many delays, and maybe that's why I just wasn't digging it. I'm like, this doesn't need to exist. It's just, it makes, what's the point of this? But when I read it all,
the HBO show was really good, though. The HBO show was really good.
Oh
yeah, no, and I agree, it is. But again, like, it doesn't need to be Watchmen. They could have done that show in another way. But I really enjoyed Doomsday Clock the second time I read it. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was one of the best Superman stories. One of the very best.
I also enjoyed it.
Yeah. Where were we? Lars, did you choose one? What'd you choose? Well, I disagreed with you, didn't I?
Yeah, I chose a couple. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's see how much time we got.
I think we're back to Oddfell if we want to take another swing. But
are we all the way back?
No, it's my turn. It's my turn. It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, is it your turn? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was like, I think we're somewhere, either Omar or Jess.
Yeah, Lars went, and I said I disagree with him.
I'm sorry.
I don't think I got to go yet.
No, you will.
I'm just afraid you're going to take my.
I'm not going to take yours. Okay, I'm going to think outside the box. Okay, here we go. Here's one that people love. Oh no, I can't, man. Oh, there's so many. I can really do this for X-Men. All right, you know what? People love this one too. I don't care. Uncanny X-Men 350, The Trial of Gambit. I hate that story so much. I love the art. Joe Mad. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so pretty. But they retcon what happened in the Mutant Massacre, where a Morlock led the Marauders into the Morlock tunnel. In X-Men 350, they said, oh, no, it was Gambit. Gambit was a Marauder at one time, and he led them into the Morlock tunnel. So why the hell in X-Men 210 did the Marauders follow a Morlock into the... And there was no Gambit? Come on, man. I believe a retcon only so much, and that was crap. Oh, that pissed me off. That pissed me off so much. Dude, I remember drawing a picture for my friend Trevor, because that's like one of his favorite stories. And I drew a picture of Gambit getting his brains blown out by Magneto. And it's like the real trial of Gambit, guilty of being a douchebag. He's got that hanging up on his wall to this day. I hated that story. I love the art, but oh my gosh, sometimes it's hard being an X-Men fan and let things slide. People these days, man, they're like, I can't believe what they've done with my X-Men. You all don't know how many years I've had to say that, and I still read the stuff.
I do. There was this unfortunate tendency that sometimes when you introduce a character who's a bit of an anti-hero, he's a little darker or more ethically shady. He's not bad. He's not the villain, but he's just a little more shady than like the other X-Men. And then there's a temptation to just keep adding on those shades of darkness until like, oh, by the way, he was aligned with the murderous, psychopaths. At a certain point, it gets so cumulative. Like, why do we have any sympathy for this guy at all? And I think that's part of the problem.
Remember where, like, he was supposed to be the traitor, right? Like, that's what Will Spertasio and Jim Lee stated, like, he's going to be the traitor. And then when they left, they were like, well, we can't make Gambit the obvious traitor. we got to make Professor X the traitor of the X-Men because he's in love with Jean, and his brain snapped because Magneto. Anyway, Onslaught. Oh my gosh, that definitely was a retcon I didn't like. So yeah, there are a lot of X-Men retcons. That one I didn't think would be on anybody's list, but that one really made me mad, and I was like, bull crap. I had arguments for hours with my friends that love that story. They would take up for it. I'm like, what? Get the hell out of here. And
I will quickly point out, by the way, that everyone says the angle of Professor X being in love with Jean goes back to a panel from the Lee Kirby days. And it's like, well, this is true. It is in one panel of one comic. And in that same comic, the X-Men are defeated by circus freaks and the Blob.
Yes.
And nobody, it's like, do they still acknowledge them all being defeated by circus freaks? It's ridiculous.
We are talking about the Trial of Gambit and our least favorite comic book retcons at this moment. And spoilers, just in case. Really quick, thank you, Meow Nyan, for the super chat. Years later, thoughts on Zorn? 100% hated it. Hated it the moment Zorn revealed that he was Magneto. So Grant Morrison did a lot of wonder.
I thought that was really good.
Oh, see, okay, I disagree. I hated that because it was so out of character. Anyway,
original Zorn is so out of character, but I did really like future Zorn being Jean. That was cool.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you're talking about the what was that? Children of the Atom crossover? What was it called?
I think it was just Children of Battle of Atom.
Battle of the Atom. Thank you so much. I have a lot of strong feelings about Morrison's runs. Ups and downs. They did a lot of great things for X-Men. They got me back into X-Men. But Zorn being Magneto and Attack on Weapon crap. Oh my gosh. Retconning Weapon X really made me mad too. Like, what? Weapon 10? Hell no. It's always been Weapon X. Shut up, Lars. You were okay with that. I was okay with Superboy Prime being a douchebag evil. All right. Let's do one more round. And come back to so after Jess goes, we'll come back to Jess and wrap it up. And then we can do this again because this is a lot of fun and there's a lot of these stories we can talk about. Yeah,
there really are. This is something I just thought about because all my other choices have been taken by other people. I feel like the character of Cable, I feel like his whole story is retcon after retcon after retcon. He was a character that came from the future. Okay, fine, but it gets so confusing now that we've got young Cable being in Krakoa, living on the moon with his parents, Scott and Jean, and young Cable killing old Cable. And wait, how is young Cable even alive? Don't explain it to me. I don't believe any of it. How is Cable time jumping? He's getting rewritten every single time he appears. He's got some new crisis, death iteration. We're going to get Lady Cable pretty soon where he's in one of the, I don't know, with Lady Deadpool. What's going on with Cable? He's just retconned all the time, and it's supposed to be character development, but it looks like that It's Sunny in Philadelphia meme where there's strings coming off all the various Charlie's conspiracy theory thing, and I'm like, how am I supposed to follow Cable when he kills himself but then reappears and stuff? I
actually agree with you that it's a mess, but the Krakoa stuff actually does reconcile into itself. Cable is potentially my least favorite X-Men character, and even I enjoyed the young Cable run. And they do sort that out. They do sort that out.
I do like the young Cable run, but I haven't got to what you're saying where they sort it out.
Lars Goldballs? I'm sorry, Ed?
Goldballs is not as prominent a character as Cable.
You said your least favorite X-Men. Those characters count. Stacy X? Maggot?
I think if we're talking the major, the prominent ones. We're talking the prominent ones.
I actually
there's a very low level character I like less, but they're low level.
I like. Okay. I actually disagree with Jess. I actually like the complexity of Cable. It's a nightmare to keep up with, but once you get it, you feel like the smartest guy in the room. You're not. You're just the biggest nerd in the group. You do feel a little bit smarter. I do agree that one of the stupidest thing that happened was under Rosenberg's run was the death of old Cable by young Cable, because it makes absolutely no sense, and it got wiped away anyway. Even though I really like that Jerry Duggan series of Cable. If you haven't read it, it's solid.
Everything they did with young Cable in the Rosenberg run, I just did not enjoy. Like I liked how they tried to make him old Cable again in Krakoa. They're like inching their way. I'm very behind, so maybe they've already done it. But the Rosenberg stuff is just messy.
There's always one of you guys Maggot fans. Well, at least he's got a Marvel legend.
See, by the way,
Adam X doesn't.
This is the nice part of being a non-completist. Is like, for example, Maggot was in the years that I wasn't really reading X-Men, so it doesn't really hit me that much. And actually, Odfel, you were talking about developments with Cyclops. Well, I stopped reading when Bendis left, and then I didn't pick it up again until Hickman comes on board, so I missed all of that.
It's for the best. It's for the best.
Well, that's because those comics were at the library, and I was like, even free, I don't know that this is a good idea.
I started reading X-Men at Bendis, and I fell in love with it, and I hated the stuff after Bendis so badly. Like, some of it was hit or miss, but it got so bad that that's what actually made me go back and read a bunch of the older stuff, which was great, but it was not good.
I can't believe I forgot about that you started reading with Bendis. I would have never asked you on the show.
I like the Bendis X-Men.
Oh my
I
gosh!
like it too. I like the Bendis run. I do. I do.
Yeah. I love the suit. I know that's a controversial take. Love the Cyclops suit with the X.
Yeah.
I like that. I like aspects. I like that he made Magic one of the main characters.
Yes.
But there were a lot of things I did not like about his run. Oh my gosh, it's going to be hard to choose one more. All right. Odfel, you're up next. Another least favorite moment.
Since we're doing one more round, and since we might do an X-Men one, I'm going to drop all my other X-Men ones, and I'm going to pick a DC one that might not be a retcon, but it felt like one, even though it was like on the line of reboot and retcon. So you can call me if it's a reboot. But in New 52, Batgirl just got perforated right in half in the story. So you get this really good true crime drama where Batgirl's finally an adult. It's Gail Simone. She's dealing with this entire thing with her identity where her dad is hunting down Batgirl and she's running because she got accused of a murder that she didn't commit. And it's this whole family drama that's contrived and interesting. She's involved with other Batman titles and other DC things. So she's in the universe. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the run, it's now Batgirl of Burnside. And this happens before the Rebirth reboot. There's about 10, 15 issues before Rebirth. And then they reboot Burnside again for Rebirth. So there's just this weird cut where all of a sudden she's missing from the other books. And when she does appear in other books, she's now a teenager again. And even though it could be as a reboot, like, she's all of a sudden just a teenager in the middle of a series in other books, not just her own. And it wasn't a universe reset, and it just felt like real bad whiplash. And it's one of my least favorite retcon reboot moments. It's real weird, but I hated how quick they de-aged her because she was finally getting this really fun adult plot line, especially with Gail Simone, who had been writing Birds of Prey before this and really elevating her. It just felt, I don't know. I didn't like it. It was the timing.
I thought you meant she got cut in half like Darth Maul and ended up with spider legs.
I was a bit concerned about that as well.
Yeah,
now I understand.
Because I thought it was a desperate attempt to get her back into the wheelchair. We will literally saw her in half.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that didn't happen, so that's good. Yeah.
That was a really weird thing to do in the middle of a run. I was not a fan of bringing back Batgirl to begin with because that was such. I'm sorry. I know you liked it, and I get it, and I'll go back to why I don't. Because to me, there are not that many characters that are, in wheelchairs. There's a few.
Yeah.
And Oracle for the longest time had been such a badass character. And for a lot of people, she was a top tier character. And it was somebody that didn't have superpowers, couldn't walk. But instead of, going down and the opposite way, she looked up and she rose above it all to become this awesome character and was with the birds of prey, even though she couldn't go on adventures with them. I thought that was so awesome. And to take that away, and for people that also can't use their legs, that are stuck in wheelchairs, I thought that was so crappy of DC to do. However, I do agree.
I miss Oracle.
Right.
Oracle was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, they gave it to the right person. They gave it to Gail Simone, and she did write a lot of interesting stories. At heart, I will always have Oracle. Like that's my Barbara Gordon. I did not like Burnside because it made it into this kitty, definitely, tapping into the manga market that is selling at the time. Of course, like everything about the covers, and Marvel does the same things too. Like, I mean, that's what kind of Dr. Aphra has turned into, where it used to be exploring in space and adventures, Indiana Jones style, has turned into almost like a not shoujo manga, but shoujo. It's turned into like a shoujo manga with like all these characters and romantic stories and a little bit of adventuring. So yeah, I'm with you. I did not like that turn. It was a really weird turn to do that with her. So
I would not have minded if it was like a side shot or like a different universe, but it was weird because it was not just Batgirl. They did Batgirl, Black Canary, and Starfire all at the same time because Starfire had negative feedback from Red Hood and the Outlaws. And they just de-aged all of them like that. And all of a sudden they went from like adult women to teenagers, and it just was very jarring for the era. But I do agree. I wish they would keep her as Oracle, and I still think she's not Oracle even now. Like, I wish they would just let her be Oracle.
I thought that. I'm sorry. I thought they were gonna head that way. I'm a big fan of.
Sure, I'm behind.
Cain. I love Cassandra Cain. That was my Batgirl, and she was also another interesting character that they did and kind of did away with. And really quickly, I want to point out a couple things here during Bendis's run. Somebody was asking, is Iceman gay, good or bad?
Sure, good.
Bad in the way he came out. Good for the character, sure. Like
was it bad? I don't recall.
I did not like I had a long conversation with my brother about that. Like, it was just a really stupid way that he came out, and it wasn't that he came out. It was Jean Grey was reading his thoughts. Now,
I agree with you until someone said this to me, so I'll go ahead and share it because I also hated it. I was like, it's fun seeing Jean being negligent with her powers and get reprimanded for it, but I hated that scene. But then someone's like, yeah, but it's important because some people get outed and they don't get that moment, and watching Bobby have to cope with not being the one who said it was interesting. And I never thought about it that way. And it's made me in hindsight appreciate it a little more, even though I felt like it was clunky and not introduced the best into the story.
Now, that was young Bobby, not
it's young Bobby. Yeah, because young Jean was a menace.
Yeah, I will say at the young Bobby, I was like, okay, he's gay. But whenever they made 616 Bobby gay, I was really not digging that. Mainly because I don't have a problem with characters turning gay later. The problem was that for years I'd been reading his thought bubbles and hanging out with his girlfriends, and that makes it a little more. At least that makes it a little more hard to believe. So, yeah, but it happened. Right? So it's canon now.
Reading his thoughts is one thing, and yet there are plenty of individuals who, like for example, Bunnicula author James Howe, who married women and had children with those women, and then later in life decide, I'm gay.
And I'm not saying that never happens, but I think it's hard to separate the comic book nerd from like, okay, let's look at it logically, right? It's like, I've been able to hear his thoughts and all these things that he's been going on through the years. But regardless, it happened. So it's just one of those things that it's canon. I don't think they explained exactly how the 616 universe Bobby is gay, though. You just assume?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember.
Somehow,
did they have a talk? I thought they had a talk, and it was like, hey, I'm gay. I guess that makes you gay too. And he was like, okay.
Is that when Bendis brought the young
05.
team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
doesn't he have some moment where he goes, I'm gay in the future?
I think he was. I think there was some lying going on there. I don't know. Somehow for me, it was a fairly smooth transition.
Yeah, I thought it was decently smooth. Like the panels where him coming out happens is kind of aggressive because he's not the one to get to say it.
Mhm.
But
I thought
young
that
Bobby getting to
young
talk
Bobby-
to his older self, you get like this really good conversation with Bobby talking about being a ladies' man and being in the closet, and I think it kind of patched a lot of the gaps for me.
Okay, yeah.
But it
Okay.
is only in one issue, and I think it's a side shot because I think if I remember right, they did like one issue for each of the 5 at that time. So if you miss that issue,
towards the
you
end.
would feel like it's kind of disjointed.
I
Okay, so
feel like
young Bobby-
part of the idea was that the younger one was thinking I'm gay, but my older self isn't gay, and it turns out the older one was gay. He was
Yes.
just faking it.
All right, young Bobby is 616 Bobby. Hold on a second. Same continuity, different parts of the time. I love his Orson Welles avatar, so I had to highlight that. And it was issue 600 where old and young Bobby have a conversation. Okay, I got to go back here to a super chat really quick, but I did want to bring that up because I know a lot of people have issues with that, and it's just one of those things that's now canon, so it doesn't really matter, you know, how you feel, whether you like it or not. It happened, and that's what the Iceman is now. New 52 Batman, anything is kind of a retcon mess. Everything happened in 5 years. What a nightmare. They still haven't sorted out Azrael, nope, or Lincoln March. Batgirl was yet another mess. I feel like that's what happened a lot back then during the New 52. Some things were working and others weren't, so they were just throwing things left and right. Who suffers worse from Hawkman? Thank you again, Beyond Man. Hawkman continuity syndrome. Oh my gosh, took him 3 years to finally figure out Hawkman after Crisis? Because there's a reason I use Hawkman as the prime example of confusing retcons. Yeah, editors and writers weren't talking to each other. I think it took him actually longer than 3 or 4 years to settle that.
I think Venditti's run is really good of Hawkman.
Well, that's in continuity now, so that's a good
right. But that's a Hawkman run that I really enjoyed. I totally get this statement here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No,
now,
New 52 though, I can't even tell you what's retcons and what's still canon. Like that was my introduction into comics, was when New 52 was new, and it's seriously made me very confused moving forward and backward because of how much is still held on to and not. Like New 52 is this weird anomaly at this point where I'm like, should I throw all of it out the window? So as a new reader, New 52 is hard to jump into.
I wanted to pick this comic because it reminds me of something. Iceman thing don't work for me. Felt like it was a shock thing. Is Beast still gay? Is Warren next? This reminds me of that era, yes, where it was a shock factor to make characters gay. And I feel like one of the few writers that actually confronted this in a really smooth way was Grant Morrison during their run on New X-Men, where Beast is making that statement. He's like, oh, and by the way, I'm gay. And then in a couple issues later, he was like, no, I'm not. It's just because it seems like that's what everybody else is doing. Something along those lines. And I thought, wow, that's so funny, man. Like I thought that Morrison handled that particular era like so well. Because Morrison did whatever Morrison wanted to do, like Attack on Weapon Plus.
Wow.
Anyway, all right. Let's start wrapping up. So that was Odfel. What's your choice there, Lars?
So I'm not actually that invested in this,
Okay.
Like I casually read Spider-Man. I enjoy Spider-Man. I don't have anything against Spider-Man, but he's not like part of my geek identity. But the later Hobgoblin retcon kind of rubbed me the wrong way for the only reason that because even I was casually reading in the 80s. In the 80s, there was this big mystery. There was this villain, the Hobgoblin. And who is the Hobgoblin? And I felt the ultimate choice that the Hobgoblin was Ned Leeds actually had some meaning to it. I mean, Ned he wasn't the most important Spider-Man character, but he was a regular member of the cast. He was part of the Daily Bugle crew. He went back to the Lee Ditko era. He was a character that if that character turned evil, it means something. And it certainly means something for his wife, for Betty.
Mhm.
And it means something for Peter Parker too. It meant something. And then I know that Roger Stern's original plan, which was introduced much later, is that, oh, by the way, it was not Ned Leeds. It was Roderick Kingsley, the wackadoodle millionaire. I was like, well, who cares? Who cares? I felt they took an answer to that question that had some meaning, whether you liked it or not, and just deployed an answer like, oh, well, the villain was Mike Zuckerberg the whole time. It's like, well, who cares? Who absolutely cares?
The real Hobgoblin was the friends we made
along the way. Yeah, and so I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, yeah. Well, now, like, but that answer just it kind of rings hollow and means nothing. I feel.
Yeah, that's a weird. I didn't know that because I just thought Ned Leeds was Hobgoblin. I didn't know they ever retconned that.
Well, they retconned a lot. They retconned like 15 years later.
Yeah,
a lot later.
Because it ended on such a cliffhanger when Roger Stern left the book. Then Tom DeFalco took over. So like it was never really clarified what the original idea was until the Hobgoblin Hobgoblin Lives, I think, that he wanted to come back. And
part of the problem, and some of you will know this, was that Stern had maybe always intended that it was going to be Roderick Kingsley, the multimillionaire. Mm-hmm. But again, as you say, Roger Stern left, and they had, like, Peter David and company were like, so many clues have been dropped that it is Ned Leeds. It kind of can't not be Ned Leeds at this point. Making it someone other than Ned Leeds would be completely nonsensical. So they went with Ned Leeds. They tried to fake people out by killing Ned off.
Yep.
In Spider-Man Wolverine, and then revealing, oh, by the way, the dead guy was the Hobgoblin. That was their compromise. But that was never Roger Stern's original plan. And for me, it's like, but Roger Stern's original plan is boring. So that's why I object to it.
Okay, because I actually like the idea of Ned Leeds not being Hobgoblin, but I see your point where you're coming with that.
Yeah.
All right. Oh man, there's so many good ones. Oh my gosh. Let's end it on a high note then. One more day.
Oh.
I mean, come on. I mean, we have. If we weren't going to talk about it today, we were going to talk about it the next time. I mean, One More Day is notorious for being on the list.
One More Day,
like one of the, if not the worst retcon ever. And I do understand that JMS wanted his name off the book. And, you know, part of the reason he left Spider-Man, went over to Thor, and then eventually just left comics in general was because of this. But, oh my gosh, it just made no sense. Like, that almost feels like a reboot retcon, but I mean, I think we have to talk about it.
It's rough.
It was so... it's retcon in the sense that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, would sacrifice his marriage for the life of Aunt May, who had already died before, as long as he hadn't died before, but more than one. And it is just hard to believe that a character like that would sacrifice that and a possible life too, because a kid.
I'm going to present a bit of a counter view because, as I say, I'm actually a casual Spider-Man reader. I nip in and out a lot. Like, I was kind of reading the Roger Stern stuff. I read some of the Dan Slott. I'm not that intensive about reading Spider-Man.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
Setting aside One Day itself, okay, because I understand it's one more day. Peter Parker and Mary Jane being married is a dead end, dramatically, and it had become a dead end dramatically.
Oh, how so? You mean story wise?
Yeah. I think,
okay.
and because they spent years and years and years kind of fumbling around, like, well, they're married now, so, but what do we do with this? We'll foff her off here. They're maybe separated. They're not separated. They got that. And it's like, you just kind of, there's just this weird churn where they don't know what to do with the characters being married. But if they're not married, then I think that opens up the storytelling possibilities. So however they did it, the implement that the tool that they may have used may or may not have been great. I mean, but I think in terms of like some of the effects, I think it opened things up in a way that is perhaps more pleasing.
No,
I would agree with that.
I don't.
That's one of my.
I don't agree with that.
with X-Men is I love Jean and Cyclops. I really do. But I think they were both getting stagnant, and that's why I think one of the good things, even though it was handled not always the best in Grant Morrison's run, was introducing Emma as a catalyst for them to kind of break apart.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, unless it's a family book, like, I feel like Fantastic Four is kind of an anomaly with the married couple being stagnant because, like, it's a family book and it kind of always has been.
Well, yeah.
I feel like
okay.
no one can stay married in comics long. It's more like it gets stagnant and then
this is the
like,
problem.
I think
no, you're right. Well, first of all, you're right. Introducing Emma was a good thing. Well, actually, now, I mean, they got the whole polyamory thing going on. So they're changing that up. And also, but Scott and Jean, X-Men's an ensemble book. Their relationship is not as important as the title character being married. Someone in the comments is saying, well, why didn't they just do a divorce? Well, they do a divorce, then in some regards, they failed.
I disagree.
I'm not saying every divorce has to be a failure, but I'm saying that's how it can come across.
That was Joe Quesada's excuse. He was like, we can't tell stories about Spider-Man that are fun anymore because he's married. And I remember thinking at the time, so the message that you're giving people is that once you get married, it becomes stale and boring, and you can't go on adventures anymore.
No,
I look at books like Superman by Peter Tomasi, and I beg to differ that I think there's stories still to tell with characters or characters like Franklin and the little girl, Valeria in the Fantastic Four, that there are stories still to tell, even though these characters are married. And I know it's not important. Well, it's not as important as the foundation and marriage of Sue Storm and Reed Richards, but I do think that there are some Mary Jane and Peter Parker. I think the story is wonderful. They had already gone through separation. They've come back together. They were reunited in JMS's run, and I thought it was a beautiful reunion. So to have them torn up because of that, it just seemed like lazy writing. It's like, okay, we're gonna go back to the beginning.
I totally agree with that.
It's not that you can't do it. You can do it. It's just, but again, Fantastic Four is a family book. So Reed and Sue being married slots in there a little easier than Spider-Man.
In the same way Superman would be considered a family book.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. They had done it they had written middling marriage stories for so long. I'm not saying
you're not helping the conversation, Stacey Mellon.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't. You can. I'm just saying it poses special challenges.
You mean you're
it's extremely difficult to keep the dynamics alive once they're married, because that feels like the happy ending of a story. Like marriage always feels like the happy ending. So with a lot of the plots, unless it becomes a family book or unless it's a team ensemble, like I think Rogue and Gambit being married doesn't change the plot because of the fact they're always on a team ensemble. But a lot of times I feel like it can halt character progression if it's not written well, because it's an easy out for them to be like, well, they've already had their happy like ending, so now they're just there and they kind of just exist until someone wants to jeopardize that.
I see what you're saying, because like I think in sitcoms when the will they won't they ends and they do get together and date or get married, that makes sense, right? Because sitcoms will eventually end and will last 5 seasons, and God bless, some of them last 10 seasons. But with stories like Spider-Man, you can have that happy ending and you can have adventures. I think you have to get creative, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think change happens, and it's not like every character stays married. You can just have this particular couple stay married. I just thought it was a stupid reason and a stupid freaking story to get them separated.
It is.
Because,
I guess I just like Spider-Man better this way. The mechanism may have been dumb, but I agree that divorcing them is not going to turn out well in the long term.
Right.
And I think if you have to, as stupid as One More Day is, it's kind of hard to not affect those changes without it being stupid, frankly. So I don't know. I have somewhat enjoyed the aspects of the long-term positives that came out of that.
Oh, there were great things that come out of One More Day. Like we would have got we got Brand New Day, we got Superior Spider-Man. There were a lot of great stories. Spider-Verse.
Superior Spider-Man would play differently if they were married. This is the part of the problem.
Right,
Them not being married.
I mean, it still would have happened, and he still could have died,
Yeah.
and it still would have been Doc Ock, and it would have been added actually a little more creepy, being married to MJ, and they definitely would have gone a different route. But I really think it comes down to the writing. I think it takes a particular writer that can go in and tell you a story no matter what the circumstance the character is going through. I mean, there are a lot of writers that come in and have to pick up a complete mess that the other writers have left behind.
It is, but remember, with an ongoing franchise like Spider-Man, you don't just need one good writer who can handle this well. You need a whole series of them who can handle it well. And I think
and a good editor goes along the
you're also going to need a series of editors that can handle it well. I mean, this is a franchise that's, stop and think, if One More Day hadn't happened, then Spider-Man and Mary Jane would have been married for another 15 years here-ish. And just think of how many potentially, treading water stories we'd have gotten in the process.
I don't know, Lars.
Yeah, I'm with Omar on this.
I would have liked to have seen it, honestly.
I would have liked to have seen that, and just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it couldn't have been made well. I understand what you're saying about you need a whole team, but if you have the whole team on board with a clear vision of where it's going to go, I would have liked to have seen that. And I'm going to say something that is really controversial because everybody hated this except that I loved it. I would have liked to have seen, just for 10 or 12 issues, I would have liked to have seen Batman and Selina get married, Bruce and Selina get married. What would happen to a married Batman? Just throw me a bone here, people. Just let me see what happens to Batman when he actually has a little bit of happiness in his life.
To be fair, that is what Tom King did. Tom King did explore Batman and Selina being married pretty thoroughly.
We didn't actually. Well, I mean,
not in canon, right?
Well, they were together, and
it's one of those weird gray zones where he's kind of telling it as if this is actually what's happening. But I don't know how much they'll stick to that in future, obviously.
Gotcha.
He does pursue the thread of them being married until very late in life. I guess that's all I'll say.
I do really want to see more with Bruce and Selina being potentially married because they've done a lot of Black Label stuff with it. But I think with the growing dynamic of the Bat family getting tighter knit, having Selina more present both with the Bat family, with all the Batgirls and Robins that they've accumulated, and also just with Bruce, it's a good time in his storyline to explore that, and I do hope we get more of that.
Yeah. Well, Batman Catwoman is essentially Selina's story. I mean, it is a really interesting read.
Is that continuity though? Because I was
it went out under Black Label, but that's what. But this is a continuation of what he set up in his main run. So
right.
I think they kind of just decided to go, here's a story, and how much will they stick to it down there? I mean, this won't be the final word on the characters, obviously. But it was sort of treated like it. It's a weird gray area.
Let me take this super chat really quick. I'd argue marriage wasn't the problem. They're just really bad at writing MJ. She floated around different titles for years. For some reason, they can't write her like Lois Lane or Gwen Stacy. Probably because she's been around a lot longer than Gwen was. I don't know. The whole Lois and Clark thing also had its ups and downs and kind of went away. But I figured, talking about One More Day was very crucial to this conversation when talking about just bad retcons, because it was mainly what Peter Parker chose to do that bothered me. And I understand the ramifications of what happened, but no, it just did not work. Peter Parker would never have done that. And Aunt May would have never told him. And I realized that it was MJ that decided, but also MJ wouldn't be that selfish. Like,
No.
and I know she feels like it's an unselfish thing, but it's destroying a possible life. Just makes no damn sense. Jess, did you have one more, buddy, or did you agree with one more?
I didn't. I want to speak out for my gal Mary Jane. The Amazing Mary Jane issues were really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most fun Mary Jane that's been written in a while.
I loved that series. I'm so sad it didn't end. I loved it so much.
Yeah, I really, really like that series. I wish it had gone on and there was more of it, because I think Mary Jane had a chance to explore herself, and we got instead of being with Peter to define her, she was on her own and got to grow as a character. And I thought it was a really well done book. I wish it had gone on and on.
Yeah, now she's getting is it another series with Black Cat, MJ and Black Cat, I think?
Is it Black Cat and MJ Beyond?
Yeah, I think so. So it's another series that they're doing.
I haven't read that yet, so I don't know.
You do realize that we're discussing fictional characters and relationships like they're real. What does that say about us?
Because we need these things to distract us from real problems.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I don't want to talk about my own life. You know?
I mean, unless you want to hear about my problems and Bill's and all that, yeah. But it's a distraction from reality. It's what makes comics.
Whenever I go on a rant on my channel, I always say, yes, I am aware these characters don't exist. I'm aware they're fictional characters. And that's also when I talk about a book that people hate, where there's some changes, like a modern book with some modern changes in it. I'm like, why are you people getting so upset about this? This book isn't real. These are fictional characters. Go pick up a newspaper if you want to be upset about the state of the world. Just don't even read this book if it's going to upset you. They're not real.
Yeah, I think I'd rather be more upset about this
because it isn't real. I mean, as you say, you would get much more upset at what's in the newspapers because that's actually happening.
Well, I don't want to talk about the recession. I'd rather talk about this fictional marriage.
On this electrifying debate, I should actually go here to talk to my wife for a little bit before bed.
She's not having a meeting with Mephisto right now, is she?
Well, she might. I have to go find out. Because that's sort of an element she would pursue. Thank you all quickly. Omar, Jess, always a pleasure. Oddfell, tremendous pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Where can people find you, Lars? Where can people find you?
Oh, yes. I'm at madnorwegian.com, where I'm one of those weird Doctor Who guidebook writers. And it's an exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan right now because, of course, we're going to have a 60th anniversary special next year. And then a brand new Doctor on Disney Plus, of all things. So exciting times. It'll just take a year to get there. So thank you all.
Good to see you, Lars.
See you, buddy. And have a good night. Wrapping up here. Take it easy.
I just want to finish actually my point about caring about fictional characters. That shows you the strength of writing when you writer, when you actually start to care about fictional characters. It's the same thing. When you go watch a movie and you cry, you watch television and you cry, you read a prose book and you cry, you're invested in the character, you really care about them. It's the same thing with comic books. They don't exist, but if the writing's really strong and sucks you in and makes you care about the character, you're going to develop feelings for that character, just like every other kind of medium out there.
Facts.
Absolutely.
Facts. And I'd rather have this kind of discussion than real life problems, honestly, because that stuff gets all depressing. All right. So that's it for this time. I've saved some other ones for next time. Maybe we can get Curtis to join us because I'd like to do this again. This was a lot of fun. And a lot of interesting thoughts and debates going on, not just from us, but also the chat. It's interesting to see what like some of your favorites, our favorites are, and what they don't agree with, or vice versa. Odfel, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you when you're not hanging out with me?
Yes, hello. I do comic book and unboxing videos over on YouTube at Odfel, and then cosplay pretty much everywhere else on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Odfel. On Twitter, it is a 0 instead of an O, though. And I'm also on Patreon if you want to see behind the scenes on how I make costumes.
Excellent, excellent. And what about you, my dude, OmniDog?
You can find me on YouTube, OmniDog's Vault, where I just did an explanation of the stories that are in Astro City Metro Book 2.
Mm-hmm.
And my other video was my favorite pulp action adventure comics. And then I'm going to be doing some more overviews and reviews it depends on how I feel. And on Instagram, OmniDogs_Vault. Well, you will not see me cosplaying because no one wants to see me cosplay at all, especially not my wife.
Okay. At this moment, I just want to remind everybody to smash that like button. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back, and I'll try to get together with these folks and see what other fun topics we can talk about too. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone stay healthy and safe. Thank you for joining us. Remember to keep reading those